Sup, my fellas, don't forget to leave feedback and enjoy the story. The story usually goes like this. A long, long time ago, on a peaceful day, the Demon King invaded, and, as always, an unknown hero appeared, as if he had been waiting. We see the leg of this wonderful man. During the final battle of the Demon King and the hero sacrificed himself, defeated the Demon King and saved the world. The Demon King descended deep underground and fell into slumber, and he would return one day. I'll add this cliché sentence that you've all heard 1,000 times. The world became peaceful, and the hero turned into a legend. I don't know who the author is, but this over-sophisticated story of the Demon King and hero will keep repeating itself forever, and after a very long time. The present, in front of us is a gate leading to a passage illuminated by many lanterns. Someone's hand opens the gate, from behind which a very bright light begins to shine. Your Majesty, something very bad happened. A strange creature with a huge mouth and a strange hairstyle resembling a ball of snakes screams loudly. What? Asks a huge creature, dressed in protective armor and emitting a characteristic red and black aura. Demir goes, the 666th has awakened, says the toothy servant, who fell to his knees. As soon as he did, he left the demon realm. The demon monarch is perplexed, but does not say anything. He said that he quits being the Demon King. The servant continues to report. There is a mixture of despair and anger on his face. What the hell are you saying? He hears. I thought, he mumbles hesitantly. Speak, His Majesty shouts in rage. He escaped, says the servant and shows the note that Demirgo's left. It literally says this: I refuse to be a Demon King. Don't look for me, idiots. Bye. Signature, 666th. What? The monarch roars again. He doesn't believe his eyes. Someone is walking along the city pavement. Apparently this is the main character. He hums with pleasure. He approaches a grandiose, light-colored building towering over the square. Pigeons fly up from under the hero's feet. This is the Verd Kingdom's Arkoma Castle, he thinks, looking at the building. Awe, as expected of the human realm I've heard so much about, thinks Demirgo's, closing his eyes. How convenient, he says, after which, laughing, he begins to circle around the magnificent bridge, arms outstretched in a feeling of bliss. However, this joy quickly ends. A devilish light appears in the hero's eyes. He sees a huge magnificent cross with large precious stones above his head. Hey, you redneck, where did you come from here? The hero suddenly hears a question addressed to him. Two guards, in armor, armed with spears and swords, approach him. Do you think you can just walk around here? One of them asks. Hillbilly. Demirgo's is perplexed. He's talking about me, he thinks. Maybe it's because of my clothes, because everything seems to be fine with my face. The guards continue to pester him, and one of them even points his huge spear in his direction. How dare you loiter in front of the Arkoma Castle? Seems like you be lost your sense of fear. Why are you looking back? I'm talking to you. Introduce yourself. What is your name? The hero asks me in bewilderment, pointing a finger at himself. I can't tell them that I am Demirgo's, the 666th, he thinks. A wonderful idea comes to his mind. Yes, I'll just take a few letters from my name, make a new one out of them, and tell them. Hello man, he says, smiling happily. I am Deus. The deceiver's face simply glows with happiness. Another character in knight's armor appears next to the guards. To claim the name of the ancient god like that, he says indignantly. Don't you know that this is the capital of the Verd Kingdom? Count Bruo, says one of the warriors who approached the hero at the beginning. But the aristocrat does not pay attention to him. He tells the hero that he will forgive him if he called himself by the name of God out of ignorance, but Demirgo's must get out of here immediately. Is the Verd Kingdom strong? The hero asks, smiling and very at ease. What? The count asks, not believing his ears. It's strong enough to take me as its king, right? Asks Demirgo's mockingly. The count becomes enraged and takes out a huge sword from its scabbard, which he points at the hero. How dare you insult the royal family? He shouts. You will pay with your head for your stupidity. A menacing gleam appears in the hero's eyes. The count receives a powerful blow, and his subordinates look in horror at what is happening to him. One of them, one-toothed, looks at the splashes of Sir Bruo's blood, but after a moment it flies to him. The soldier's head flattens and one of his eyes pops out. The hero stands calmly and looks at the nightmare that is happening to the castle guards. The survivors are trying to understand what happened. Someone notices that they just exploded for no apparent reason. Demirgo's ominously extends forward a finger smoking with strange energy. The heads of the remaining guards immediately fly off. Kill him, shout the archers, located at some distance from the hero. They draw the strings of their bows to strike him from afar, but some energy arrows are already flying towards them, which seem to have flown out of the hero's eyes. He actually looks at the archers. After a moment, the heads of this type of guard fly off. Arise, pronounced by Demirgo's. Headless corpses in armor hover in front of the hero, feet up. And welcome your new king, says the demon. Praise these steps I take with your blood. Dead bodies, lined up in a wedge, float over the bridge, flooding it with their blood. Bless this body's ascension with your tears, says Demiurgos. Vanity begins near the castle. Armed people, talking loudly, begin to gather in detachments. There are exclamations. Bring everyone. The enemy has forced his way in. What? Did a war break out? Everyone outside are already dead. An entire army is approaching the hero. The soldiers are already near the gate behind which he stands. Demiurgos doesn't seem to be worried at all. He stands in an elegant pose with his hands in the pockets of his fashionable jacket. Use your screams as trumpets for me, he says in an ominous voice. His eyes glow with an eerie devilish light. His behavior and appearance terrify the soldiers, but it does not last long, since they all die under the influence of some monstrous force. Some kind of branch of hell appears near the castle, where people scream, call for help and beg to spare them. But everything is useless. There are thousands of corpses in front of the hero, but he still calmly keeps his hands in his pockets, and he smiles like the last scum. A prayer heard by someone nearby reaches his ears. The Almighty and Creator of this world, the virtual, our Father, God. Nearby, kneeling on one knee and holding a sword in front of him, there is a praying man. Your name shines divinely, and as the master of eternity you decide the start and end, he continues. In the trial of darkness guide us with the light of the bright truth, and may we emerge victorious. We see the person praying up close, there is a lot of light around him. Prevail against death and let truth triumph over deceit, he says. He takes the sword out of its sheath. Please destroy the evil in front of me and grant me the power to defeat it. Powerful streams of yellow energy spread from this person's torso in all directions. Is that light aura? Asks Demiurgos, smiling. Are you Blood, the person I've heard about? I don't know who you are, but you use black magic, says the hero's opponent with a very dissatisfied expression on his face. It's unbelievable how you broke through our Coma Castle's defenses yourself. Powerful rays of light shoot out from the eyes of this character. However, you won't be able to get past me, someone who has received God's blessing, he warns. In front of us are someone's shoes again. It turns out that this same Blood suddenly jumped high into the air to strike with his sword. I may not be a pure blood, he shouts, but I will still defeat you. The traces of the swings of his sword are visible in the air. The attacker's eyes are invisible due to the bright yellow energy shining through them. What? That was nothing? Blood says in surprise, assessing the result of his attack. His opponent stands as if nothing had happened and extends his weapon in his direction, the type of which is still impossible to make out. Now it's my turn, asks Demiurgos. Our Father, who's up in heaven, dear God, says the hero, clearly parodying his rival. Please, kill this person. What an idiot, he says, interrupting his false prayer. I also prayed, he says, so now we will find out which of us will be heard by God. Demiurgos openly mocks his overly pious enemy. He looks at the hero with horror. A series of blows follows, and a fair amount of blood flies into the air. Do not mention the name of God to me again, Demiurgos says edifyingly. Blood can't believe he was dealt with so easily. No, he shouts in a wild voice. Yes, the hero yells, finishing off the enemy with his fist. The knights, of whom there are still a surprising number inside the huge reception hall of the palace, back away in horror towards the stairs, beyond which the throne is visible. Hello everyone, says Demiurgos calmly. Are you waiting for me? He slowly approaches this frightened herd. The knights talk to each other in horror. He is here. Is it just one person? We are the last line of defense, stand to the last. Who are you? Asks the hero the monarch, who is very unpleasant to look at. Demiurgos moves casually towards him, hands in the pockets of his fashionable jacket. It seems that you are the king of this castle, he says. Shall we talk? One of the knights points his halberd at the hero and asks angrily how the hero dares to talk to his majesty in such an inappropriate manner. Demiurgos snaps his fingers. Something terrible is happening to the wall of knights covering the king. It looks like there were mass casualties this time too. Will anyone else complain? Demiurgos asks mockingly. The knights, behind whom the king sits, curse in shock, but not too confidently. Great, says the hero and rushes forward. His aura scatters the warriors who defended the monarch in different directions. Demiurgos rushes through their ranks. A second later, he is already standing over the king, who, sitting on the throne, is helplessly trying to cover himself with his hand from this threat. Well, let's start negotiations, asks Demiurgos, smiling. What do you want? The monarch squeals. Money, title, I'll give you my best. Demiurgos smiles slyly and closes his eyes. Give me the kingdom, he says, looking at the monarch with his shining eyes. This is impossible, the man in the crown screams, sputtering. Seriously, have you thought about what I will ask you? Asks the hero. If this is not possible, just die. When you'll die, I'll claim the royal family as mine. That way the kingdom will naturally become mine. Demiurgos yawns demonstratively and cleans his ear with his little finger. My family. The king cannot believe his ears. Now I understand everything, he yells, his mouth wide open and his eyes sparkling. Bastard, you need my daughter. Daughter, asks Demiurgos indifferently, scratching the back of his head. I don't need her. I didn't even know you had it. Not my daughter, the king shouts in rage. April is the pride of the Horse's continent and the flower of the royal family. No, I don't need her, Demiurgos says calmly. What I need is the royal family. Why do you want what does not belong to you? The king shouts in furious anger. What? The hero asks ironically. Are you saying it's all yours? His eyes sparkle brightly. Of course, the monarch screams, sputtering with saliva. The kingdom belongs to the royal family. Since when? Asks Demiurgos, looking menacingly at his interlocutor. Has this world belonged to you since its creation? You also took something that belonged to someone else, the royal family. If you enjoyed yourself for decades while sitting on that throne, surrender it so I can take it. No, shouts the king, sitting up on his throne. Do you think that the Sanctus Maximus Populi will acknowledge you? He yells, his eyes bulging. Sanctus Maximus Populi, smiling, asks Demiurgos again. He starts laughing loudly as if he had heard one of the best jokes of his life. Do you understand that I don't care about this, idiot? We see something like a very powerful explosion. The grandiose cross, which worried the hero a little earlier, shatters into pieces. We see a collapsed tower and a burning man screaming in pain. Demiurgos looks from above at the corpses that burn under him. Seems like you don't have any blood, he says to the dying king on his throne. If you did, then you would have been able to withstand several seconds more, declares Demiurgos, standing in front of the smoldering remains. How boring. The hero walks through the smoldering remains. Hey God, I'm very disappointed, he shouts, looking up at the heavens. These guys were completely unprepared. A ray of light falls from the sky on Demiurgos, and for the first time we clearly see two huge wings behind the hero's back. The light seems to be a response from the being to whom Demiurgos addressed. Well, it's going to be a while before a pure blood awakens, the hero thinks, looking at this light. Is there still 20 years left? It seems our hero has a bad habit of keeping his hands in his pockets. The day that I descend is usually. Someone shouts loudly behind the hero, and he turns his head in that direction. He sees a frightened girl. Who the hell are you? She screams in horror. Demiurgos looks at her a little guiltily. Who? The question hangs in the air. The lost demons of the first war descended into the demonic realm with the demon's king Broken Soul, and put it in a new body, pouring in all sorts of magic and curses into him for 100 years, then resurrecting him once again. The new demon king. Then came the second war. We thought there were no heroes anymore, so we'd finally take over the land. But another damned hero showed up. We see the scarred hero's stern eyes emitting yellow energy. So we lost again. Again the demons resurrected a new demon king for 100 years. And another damn hero showed up. They resurrected the demon king for another 100 years. And a new hero showed up once again. This repeated 665 times. This kept going for a whopping 66,580 years. The story of the hero saving the world is now a way too obvious cliche. Times of numbness to safety, where people thought the hero would show up again when the time comes. In the underground, thinking this will is really the final last one. We see dozens of ugly clawed hands that reach out to the character inside some kind of crystal. The inhabitants of the underworld are pleadingly calling for a new king, who must come and show them the way. They put in all their might and resurrected the 666th demon king. His name was Demiurgos the 666th. We see the hero's eyes glowing with evil energy. The bringer of despair to all humans on the earth opened his eyes that day. He's ditched. We again see that farewell note in which the hero announced his reluctance to play the demon king and called all those who pinned such hopes on him idiots. One can only imagine the despair of those whose hopes he disappointed. What did you do to my father, the kind, you evil mage? The girl asks the hero. Demiurgos looks at her silently. What's wrong with her? He thinks, standing against the backdrop of the fire. He recalls the words of the murdered king about the pride of the continent and the flower of the royal family. So, you are Princess April, Demiurgos finally says. The king is dead. This means it is time to take his daughter and ascend to the throne. The hero's eyes emit reddish energy. What did you say? April exclaims in horror. Demiurgos snaps his fingers. The girl seems to be under magical influence. Her eyes freeze and her body is enveloped in a purple-green haze. She kneels down and places her hands on the ground. This lowly body of mine belongs to you, the girl says, looking down. Please, take me away, my master. Demiurgos pushes off the ground. He rises above the burning ashes, in the middle of which sits April, who has become completely submissive to him. The hero lands in front of her. He approaches the girl and lifts her head. Good. From now on you're my first human, he says, looking straight into the eyes of his victim. Thank you, master, April answers obediently. Demiurgos brings his lips to the girl's lips to kiss them. But suddenly he looks somewhere to the side and orders someone to stop peeking and come out of the shadows before he tears out his eyes. A violet glow appears at a short distance from the demon and the girl. As expected of you, my lord, comes from there. So did you notice? The space is torn, and we see facial features in the crack that appears. Now we have a long-haired character with painted nails, holding a hat on his head. He seems to say hello. He takes off his headdress and places it on his chest. Your loyal subject, Alex, greets you, my lord, he says in the most polite tone. You've been watching me all this time, says Demiurgos, who is standing next to April. You disappoint me, my lord, Alex replies. I am always with you wherever you go. Bullcrap, Demiurgos answers him rudely. You served my father, not me. Your body was passed down by your ancestors themselves, says Alex, obediently lowering his eyes. Now you are my only master. Whatever. Just get lost, Demiurgos answers irritably and points his finger where exactly Alex should go. Because I don't intend to return to the demon realm anymore. Okay, sir, says Alex. The answer alarms the hero. I will carry out all your orders, sir, the blonde young man declares, smiling. Ignore me and continue doing what you are doing. And what did I do? Asks Demiurgos, looking menacingly at his relative. Weren't you trying to plant that woman with your mighty seed? Asks Alex. He points his finger at April, who is still looking at the hero in fascination. In front of us is a hand with painted nails, holding a glass of wine. I, Alex, who has never left your side for 80 years of demonic soul period, a strange blonde man begins his story. Would you listen to me about my sacrifice for you that cannot be heard without wine or tears? During your childhood I breastfed you, changing my own body, that was your nasty doing. I became the perfect teacher through affectionate education. I remember you beating the shit of me. I'm the only demon who gave you affection till the end until you entered the egg of awakening. So it was you, scum, who put me there, Demiurgos angrily exclaims. But Alex doesn't pay attention to this remark. He continues his story. Pictures from the past pop up in his memory. It feels like only yesterday you were toddling around with your little hands and feet. I can't believe you're all grown up now and have opened your eyes to women. I'm so emotional, you wouldn't know. Shut up, Demiurgos says demandingly. Enough with your nonsense, the hero interrupts Alex irritably. Let me be clear, I'm not doing the Demon King stuff. As of today, I've been reborn as a normal human being. Of course, my lord. Do whatever you want, Alex tells him, an ironic grin on his face. What's the matter? Asks Demiurgos, looking intently at Alex. What do you mean? He asks to clarify, narrowing his eyes. What are you scheming? The hero asks angrily. Tell me why the hell you're just letting me be. Speak the heck up quickly. Alex laughs, asks his master to calm down and promises to tell him everything. My lord, is there a special reason you chose to attack this country? He asks. Cause? Demiurgos looks thoughtfully at the young man standing in front of him. He doesn't understand what he's getting at. Yes, Alex confirms, like if His Highness invaded your territory or coveted the riches of the demonic realm. Or at the very least because you weren't happy. Something like that works too. Give me any reason. Demiurgos thinks. No, he says. I don't really have one. I just figured I'd rather live as a king if I'm going to live as a human. Alex claps his hands. How fitting of the Demon King, he says ironically, cupping his hands in front of his face. As soon as you came to Earth, you took over the largest kingdom, killed the king, and even took the princess. How evil. What more could you do that's befitting a demon king? Demiurgos seems to be beginning to understand what his interlocutor is getting at. A normal human being or even a high-ranking demon like myself could never dare to imagine something like this, says Alex. So this is it, thinks Demiurgos, a predatory expression appearing on his face. Since a great lord like yourself says you'd abandon us and not be the demon king, Alex continues, I shall take your son down to the demonic realm and raise him as the demon king. Demiurgos looks at Alex in bewilderment. It seems that he did not expect such a turn of events. A sparkle appears in Alex's eyes, and on this day, 20 years later, he says, Your son shall be Demiurgos, the 666th, and I'll make him descend to this world. We see what will happen next. Fire, destruction, screams of horror, a real nightmare. Demiurgos doesn't seem happy about this prospect. Lost in thought, he looks off into the distance. Now he looks at April, who still hasn't come out of her daze. The girl seemed to have turned into a mummy, albeit a very pretty one. Demiurgos looks at her with surprise, as if she, in turn, is hypnotizing him. The hero moves away from the girl. I almost got screwed right here, he says and starts laughing loudly. I almost became a father to a child at this young age of 80. Not understanding what is happening, Alex calls out to his master. He looks at him angrily. Alex's eyes widen and his mouth opens in horror. Shut it! Demiurgos roars and throws out a powerful stream of red-yellow energy in the direction of the interlocutor. A powerful beam shoots from the surviving tower, which explodes everything it hits. Alex covers his head with his hat and looks in fear at what is happening. We see that two fiery craters have formed on the surface of the earth not far from the tower. So you're going to set me up, bastards? Demiurgos shouts angrily, clenching his fists from the rage overwhelming him. Alex looks at the hero. He's different, he thinks. His Demon King field isn't even complete, yet he's this strong. The 666th is definitely different from his predecessors. Perhaps this time we might actually win. Alex looks at the hero with awe. We might finally do it, he thinks. He's right, says Demiurgos. The kings stand out too much. Let's go with that. Alex tries to understand what the hero means. Defender of justice, hero, explains Demiurgos, raising his index finger. What a hero? Alex still doesn't understand what we're talking about. An ally, says the hero with an insidious glint in his eyes. Alex, already breaking out in a cold sweat, asks to explain what the hell they're talking about. Demiurgos begins to explain. He glows with anticipation and even drools. I'll be in cahoots with the hero, so I'll get acknowledged. But I'll be one step behind, so I won't stand out. The vaguest position that you wouldn't think could be the Demon King, the hero's ally. With the stupid-ass hero in front of me, I'll be enjoying the sweet ride behind him. You do the hard work, and I get the glory. Demiurgos laughs like crazy, and Alex, kneeling in front of him, tries to reason with him. Without the Demon King there is no hero, so how the hell are you going to be his ally? Please, come to your senses, me lord. Then let's find the hero. The hero does not give up. Come on, Alex. He tries to shout to the hero in order to explain something. The interlocutor's remarks are heard. What about the princess? I don't know. Deal with her yourself. Wasn't she the female lead? That was a bluff, man. My lord. Moreover, all this sounds inside a magic ball into which a character still unknown to us is looking. Looks like the 666th is faulty goods. Not only his origins are at the bottom, his intelligence is too. Well, great for me. All I need are his posers anyway. It begins to become clear who these thoughts belong to. Thanks for showing up at the right time. We see the predatory eye of a reptile. Sorry, but I'm going to borrow your powers for a bit. In front of us is a blonde with a giant snake perched next to her. I'm sure he will forgive it too, she thinks. After all, everything exists solely for the scenario. We see horse hooves. Someone is humming a song. Sir Hero, Sir Hero. The singer's legs are raised on the barrel. Our pushover hero, where could you be? You should show yourself if you don't want to die. Dumb hero, put him in front. Let him do the hard work. Let me enjoy the glory. The hero is lounging in the back of the cart, driven by Alex in his wide-brimmed hat. It is he who sings the incredibly strange song, the words of which we hear. Our pushover hero, you should fight the Demon King. Oh, yes, there is no more Demon King, recalls Demiurgos. My lord, he hears. The hero yawns, mouth wide open. He allows Alex to say what he wanted. Why are we riding in a cart when we can just fly where we need to go, asks the servant. It's a little inconvenient. What a dumbass you are, says Demiurgos, throwing his hands behind his head. Do you want to immediately show everyone that you are a demon? Alex gloatingly points his finger at the castle, which is burning down behind them. That is, a burned castle is not enough for everyone to understand this, he asks. Come on, the hero answers indifferently. Okay, Alex says, turning to face the hero. This is not the main question. Are you really going to become the companion of some hero? Demiurgos smiles and raises his index finger. Yeah, they said it's okay to be a companion even if you don't have the blood, he says. I just want to live a simple life at the top 2% of wealthy people by having a decent stand-in at the forefront killing monsters instead. Even if you become a hero's companion, it'll be hard to be in the top 2%, Alex warns him. The previous Demon King and one of the greatest 7 in the demon world is here, what's there to worry about? The hero could kill a dragon like it's a chicken if we help a little from the sidelines, says Demiurgos. I thought you wanted to be a human. Are you going to use magic? Alex asks him. The cart quietly rolls along next to green fields. Why don't I use it? Stupid, the hero says irritably. Now I understand why you lost 665 times. Okay, tell me, he says, calming down, is there a ranking system here? Alex confirms that it exists here. Do they have ranks? A, B, and so on. Something like that, Alex says, continuing to drive the cart. First is D rank. Dragon Slayer. It stands for one who can slay dragons. This is something like a title that is given for killing a dragon, the hero lazily clarifies. No, Alex answers, looking at the road in front of him. Currently dragons are neutral to both demons and humans. Dragons only attack villages in old stories. It just means they have the power to kill one. The next rank is G rank, Giant Slayer. Alex continues his story. Someone who can firth a giant. What next? Asks Demiurgos with interest. L rank, Lick Slayer. Why so many? The hero does not understand. Is there more there? After that they're just in alphabetical order, Alex answers. They just named it however they wanted. Why are the rest so plain? Asks Demiurgos, who continues to lie in the cart with his legs raised on the barrel. I don't know, the servant tells him. The hero management department decided on it. The last one is F rank, he reports. They are called the failed products. If they were fruits, they'd be the fallen ones. Since they don't sell, they're ground up and made into jam. A failed product, says Demiurgos thoughtfully. That said, you can receive more support from the nobles the higher your ranking is, or obtaining a position in the country. Alex continues. The cart is illuminated by the bright sun. Not only would failures be neglected support, they an unwanted rank that people hope would disappear. The human world is pretty cutthroat. However, there is something more important than the hero rankings, says Alex, looking back at the hero. It's blood. The closer you are to being a pure blood, the stronger you are. Yes, the first ones who saved the world 66,580 years ago. The two saviors, the hero and the priestess, their children and their children's children. Like that, their children continuing the bloodline. The holy blood. They measure how much of their blood is left in the families. The purer the blood left in the family, the stronger the aura they can use. The one with the purest blood became the hero, fighting the general and winning 665 times. Then, taking the purity level of one's blood into account or whatever, whoever is the closest to being a pure blood will have a hero rank, asks Demiurgos. There are exceptions, but usually the purer the blood, the stronger you are, Alex answers. What's up with this blood or pure blood nonsense, asks Demiurgos. He still isn't tired of holding his hands behind his head. It's not like there's a blood spoon. I was stuck in an egg for 80 years because of that war. Everyone is taking it seriously, putting their life and pride on the line, Alex replies. It seems that the hero is getting tired of this conversation. Well, okay, he says, yawning. We can sum it up, he says. We see how comfortable he is in the cart now. The hero and the Demon King will inevitably fight, he says. This has been happening for 60,000 years, and nothing has changed. Since that was the promise, reminds Alex, sitting with his back to the hero. Demiurgos hums thoughtfully, closing his eyes. The cart continues to drive through endless green fields. Can't everyone just live in peace, asks the hero. How is this cart, slow and serene? He seems to notice something. Alex, what is this, asks Demiurgos, pointing his finger somewhere in the sky. There's a leafy thing flying around. The servant looks around. It's a butterfly, he says. Butterfly. The insect lands on the hero's index finger. Some sounds come from the grass. The butterfly suddenly takes off from the hero's finger and flies away. He reaches out for her, but in vain. Who was it just now? He asks excitedly. Something flew past my face and ruffled my hair. It's the wind, Alex replies thoughtfully. Wind, Demiurgos repeats after him. What is that up there then? He asks. That thing that has been hanging over our heads for a long time. He looks up, raising his head, and then he stretches out his palm to shield himself from the sun's rays. What is this round thing that hurts my eyes when I look at it? This is the sun, Alex answers, and also raises his head. What is this sweet smell? The hero asks, sniffing. It makes my heart flutter. This is the scent of spring, says the servant. The cart continues to move through the green field. The scent of spring, Demiurgos repeats the words he heard. Alex, have you lived a long life? Asks the hero, whose back we now see. Yes, I was born after the first war, he answers thoughtfully. Since us 7 dukes were born in the demon world. So, since the first war you have been here every 100 years, asks Demiurgos, continuing to look at the sun. Lucky you, this is a wonderful place. He places his hands on the side of the cart and looks around with delight. Alex looks back at him. Previous demon kings probably didn't feel anything like this, Demiurgos says, looking up dreamily. A cart passes along the river bank. If things had gone on as usual, I wouldn't have been able to set foot here for another 20 years. And then I would be killed by a hero whom I had never even met before. I'm glad I escaped, the hero declares, smiling. He laughs cheerfully, resting his head in his hands. Being the Demon King is a job that should just disappear. Don't you agree? He asks his servant. He glances at the hero, but says nothing. Demiurgos lifts his legs in joy. Okay, I'll get some sleep. Wake me up when we get there. He yawns sweetly. Just in case, I'll say that if you bring me to the kingdom of demons, we'll both die, he says. Alex glances sideways at the hero again. Okay, my lord, he replies. The cart he is driving is heading towards the high mountains visible on the horizon. The cartwheel, making a characteristic sound, stops. We are there, my lord, Alex informs the hero. What? Already? He is very surprised. You described just such a place, says the servant. A remote corner where there is no war. The definition of an average place. A countryside village called Zorix. Zorix asks again, yawning. Demiurgos. Not bad. The cart starts moving again. What about the heroes? The hero asks. There are only 2 families, Alex tells him. On a rank family, that's close to being a G rank, and a fallen family. Looks like there isn't a D rank family, says Demiurgos thoughtfully. If there was a D rank at every castle, our demon army wouldn't even think of stepping foot on the surface, Alex reasonably notes. The hero looks at a high tower, from which ropes with multicolored flags stretch to the ground. These are such strong warriors, the hero asks. Alex answers in the affirmative. He continues to drive the cart through the city streets. The hero begins to hear snippets of conversations between townspeople. Did you hear? The Trier Castle was attacked by a dragon. The villagers are clearly frightened. They look at each other anxiously. How could such a thing happen? It's said that they haven't caught the dragon yet, so don't even think about going anywhere near Trier Castle. I heard about that as well. They say half the castle was burned down. Didn't dragons go extinct a long time ago? Is that era of the dragons making a comeback? If so, it'll be hellish according to the old stories. I thought dragons were neutral, Demiurgos says anxiously, pointing his finger at the talking townspeople. I thought so too, Alex answers him. The last time I was on the surface was 80 years ago, and since then, something has probably changed. We should hurry and notify the Sanctus Maximus Populi and ask them to send a D-rank hero, one of the townspeople loudly declares. The cart pulls up to a nice building decorated with flowers and blue flags. This is the best hotel in this village, my lord, Alex reports. I suggest you stay there. This is a hotel, asks Demiurgos. Well, not like we have a choice. Also, from now on stop calling me your lord. Call me master instead. Alex asks again incomprehensibly, and again calls the hero master. He makes a remark about this and sends a servant to rent a room. A fat, gray-haired old man sits at the counter. Welcome to our golden pavilion, he says joyfully. Give us a penthouse. My master is a very picky person, Alex asks, smiling. He politely holds his hat in front of him. The old man notices the strange clothes of potential clients. What village did they come here from, he thinks. However, he very politely says that the young people must have come from afar and must not know that the penthouse is very expensive. A chest opens in front of him with treasures looted from Arcoma Castle. The hotel administrator is covered in large drops of sweat. Holy bitch, he screams like crazy. Why aren't you escorting the customer? He shouts to someone. It's holy bitch, you chestnut tree, shouts a young guy dressed as a receptionist, running into the room. On the way, he hit his colleague on the floor. Shut up and quickly show our distinguished guests to their room, the old man demands. The guy bows low when greeting unusual clients. Stretching to attention, he introduces himself. My name is Zeke Panholovich. Please call me Zeke. I'll take the luggage, so please head on up. The trio climbs up the stairs. It's a bit rowdy right now due to the news about Trier Castle, says the receptionist. To think a dragon from the legends has appeared. But don't worry, he says. The guy drags a large chest upstairs with great difficulty, but continues to smile. There's a renowned rank family that's almost G-rank in our village. That's reassuring, says Demiurgos ironically. The receptionist opens the door to the room the guests have rented. Smiling widely, he shows what's inside. Welcome, he says happily. This is the highlight of our golden pavilion, the penthouse. To be honest, it's my first time taking charge of someone so noble, says Zeke. They bring the chest into the room. I'm not sure if it's to your satisfaction, but I will do my best to meet your needs. So feel free to call on me at any time. Hey, Demiurgos addresses him. Yes, the guy answers, smiling, waiting for him to continue. You've got the blood, right? Asks the hero. Alex looks around in surprise. Zeke, who did not expect such a question, still says that the hero is absolutely right. No wonder you felt different, says Demiurgos. There is a smile on his lips. As someone of the blood, your physique is bad, and since you're here doing busy work, you must be from the fallen family out of the two hero families here in Zorix. The hero calmly argues, putting his hands in his pockets. The guy is surprised by such insight and gasps in surprise. Your family must have had nothing but low purity descendants for generations. Continues to demonstrate its deductive abilities Demiurgos. What's your blood purity level? He asks the guy, who for some reason still hasn't put the heavy chest of jewelry somewhere. Zeke stammers and replies that, unfortunately, he only has an F rank. A failed product. He smiles, but within a second everything starts to burn above his head. Zeke tries to dodge the flames and drops the chest. Demiurgos, Alex and the receptionist look up in amazement at the sky where the fire is blazing. It is spewed out by a huge dragon with terrible sharp teeth. The monster burns everything in its path. A terrible panic begins on the streets of the village. People scream loudly and try to escape. Mothers shield their young children. Young master, you have to get away quickly, shouts Zeke, behind whom the flames are blazing. You said that dragons are neutral? Demiurgos asks Alex indignantly. I said that I'm not sure about this, he replies with a dissatisfied expression on his face. Gentlemen, Zeke does not understand what is happening in front of him now. Well, it's fine, here's the guy who opened his mouth wide. Zeke Panholovich. I'll become your supporter, says the hero, behind whom the flames are raging. So, become a hero. Zeke doesn't understand how to react. I was looking for a hero anyway, Demiurgos declares, smiling. I guess this is fate. Accept my offer then. I will give you the kind of wealth and fame you could only dream of. I'll get rid of that cursed failed product title for you. The guy listens to his new acquaintance with his mouth wide open. Do you want to live the rest of your life as in Frank that's never even held a sword? Or will you accept my offer and change your destiny? The hero looks at the guy searchingly. Tears appear in his eyes. This is the type of opportunity you will only get once in your life, says Demiurgos solemnly. The guy remembers what surrounded him in life. Blood. What kind of blood is a F rank? Why are they even having children? They'll just be failures in the end. Failed products. It'll be grand if they don't starve to death. His sister stands before his eyes, and he, bursting into tears, asks when mom and dad will return. He is hungry and really wants to eat. And now he gets a chance. He falls to his knees in front of the hero. Please, give me your support, he begs. I may just be an F rank, but I will give my everything. Demiurgos and Alex look at him arrogantly. I'll make sure you won't regret giving me a chance. The guy's face takes on an ugly shape. If you want, I will give you my soul, he shouts. Demiurgos, whose eyes glow with deceit, chuckles. I would have taken her sooner or later anyway, he says. Then it'll be your debut stage, he announces. Let's go hunt that dragon. Zeke looks at the terrible monster and his knees begin to shake. What? Can't we start with something simpler? He yells. For example, from a goblin. Then let's make a contract, says the hero. Zeke looks at him with fear. We have a contract before us. Party A, Deus. Party B, Zeke Panhalovich. 1. Party B will take party as a hero companion. 2. Party B will exercise absolute obedience to all orders from Party A 3. The relationship will continue indefinitely for as long as Party A wishes, and only Party A is able to terminate the contract. 4. The fame and fortune from the adventure will be shared with Party B in accordance with however much Party A wants, whenever Party A wants. 5. Party B may not raise any objections to the above conditions. The guy thinks this contract is incredibly unfair. State your name if you accept this contract, says Demiurgos. The contract will then be finalized. The guy is overwhelmed with feelings. He looks at the demon with round eyes, not understanding what to do next. Fame and fortune is spinning in his head. Zeke Panhalovich, the guy shouts, having finally made a decision. The contract is sealed. Demiurgos seems satisfied. Then it'll be your debut stage, he announces. Go slay that dragon. Zeke looks at where the hero is pointing his finger and is horrified. Master, humans normally can't just slay a dragon, warns the hero Alex. He raises his index finger. I know, he says and laughs joyfully. Zeke will just pretend to kill him, and we will do all the work for him. Those present look at the hero in bewilderment. So, first, Alex will talk to the dragon. We see that this represents a fight with this creature. Afterward, says Demiurgos, drop him in front of the failed product. At that time, the failed product who's in place will swing the sword at the dragon that's falling down. The gathered people will think that it was he who killed the dragon and will begin to praise him as a great hero and savior. Alex and Zeke seem to have strong doubts about the proposed course of action. The latter continues to kneel, sweating profusely. However, people will become suspicious if an F rank like Zeke suddenly slays a dragon, Alex argues. On top of that, wouldn't being a D rank hero's companion make you stand out too much to live in peace? The demons look at the guy strangely. He notices this and asks what's the matter. The next second, the hero, with a sharp movement, rips off his outer clothing. He takes the pan, and he shoots at her with rays shooting out of his eyes. A moment later, a pan with 2 holes at eye level ends up on the receptionist's head. And now we have a masked hero, declares Demiurgos. For this, all that was needed was to strip the guy down to his underpants, put a saucepan with 2 holes on his head and throw a cloak over his shoulders, which is nothing more than a receptionist's uniform. What is this anyway? Zeke thinks to himself. A hero has to wear a cape and undies, declares Demiurgos. Now no one will notice. The sudden appearance of a mysterious new hero. Doesn't that sound nice? We see a Rook holding up a burning beam. Then I will kill the dragon, says Alex, holding the edge of his hat with one hand. Great, the hero tells him. The servant goes to fight the monster and Demiurgos invites the guy to go downstairs. He stands with a saucepan on his head and, shedding tears, asks whether he really has to fight the dragon in such an idiotic form. The hero looks at him and sees that something is really missing. Here, take the holy sword, he says and pushes something in the direction of the receptionist. Zeke picks up some kind of shaft. This is the mop that finally shapes his fighting image. Just stand there holding that, even if the dragon is right in front of your face, says Demiurgos. A reddish energy emanates from his pupils. Then I'll give you fame and fortune far from what you can handle. Zeke had a weird feeling that he couldn't understand at that time. Suddenly he tightened his grip as if he was able to destroy whatever comes his way. Extreme desire. That might have been due to something in Zeke's blood. The instincts of a hero that had been sleeping in his hemoglobin. The blood of the hero, wanting to rip the Demon King before him to shreds. However, not knowing anything, Zeke probably thought like this. Seeing Sir Deus' eyes, I'm starting to gain the courage like I can do it. Fame and fortune. Yes, master, the receptionist shouts, happily clenching his fist. Forward. Good dog, says Demiurgos, and Zeke storms off in his underpants and with extremely strange objects on his head, shoulders, and hands. He also barks like a dog. The dragon, meanwhile, continues to burn everything in its path. We see people trying to escape the flames and screaming, asking to be saved. The monster, spewing out flames, roars deafeningly. The whole village is on fire. Having made one approach to the target, the dragon takes off again. Suddenly a purple spot appears next to him. This is a mini portal, after getting out of which Alex stands on the cross of the cathedral. The demon is silent, looking at his opponent. He flies up, continuing to spew out flames. Alex places his right hand on his left shoulder, and dozens of other, much more threatening hands immediately crawl out of it. Alex is holding his hat with one of them, after which it flies high up, ending up much higher than the enemy. Alex is trying to figure out how to act. He raises his hand to strike, and those that came out of him recently repeat this movement. The demon strikes with many hands. They seem to be reaching out to the monster's heart. This is indeed so. The hands that came out of Alex wrap around the dragon's hearts like barbed wire. I have your heart, Alex tells the dragon, so you must not resist me or my orders. The monster, meanwhile, continues to squirm as if in protest. First, I'll ask you something, says the demon. Why did you appear in this place? His eyes glow pink. Didn't dragons and humans make a peace agreement? Alex seems to notice something unexpected. What is this all about? He thinks, looking at the strange purple creature crawling out of the dragon. From the monster's mouth comes terrible curses that no censor will let through. Alex looks at his opponent accusingly. Can dragons really swear so dirty? He asks, what are you? There's clearly something wrong here. The dragon makes a sharp jerk and, continuing to spew fire, tries to go to a greater height. Zeke, standing on the ground in the middle of a burning village, looks up to where Alex's battle with the dragon is taking place. His appearance is ridiculous and absurd. He looks more like a crazy pervert than a hero. What is this all about? People who see it think. Who is this man? Why isn't he hiding? They wonder, looking at him from the windows of their houses. Is he trying to fight the dragon alone? Is this a hero? Zeke, meanwhile, is sweating under his pan. Now he is desperately trying to take it off so as not to cook his head, and people are having thoughts of a slightly different nature. In this outfit he looks like a real pervert. What is this crazy guy doing there? What a shame, Zeke thinks to himself. I'm scared and very embarrassed. The hero, sitting on one of the roofs, tries to cheer up the guy. Come on, masked hero, act, he shouts, waving his hand. Save our Zorix. Ah, Sir Deus, says Zeke, looking at him. It seems that public opinion has changed. Positive cheers are heard. Masked hero, a hero has come. Really, he was a hero. The guy laughs joyfully and waves his mop to the people. Thank you all very much, he shouts. He grabs the shaft with both hands. That's right, he thinks. This is a once-a-lifetime opportunity. Zeke no longer tries to throw off the pan. He tries his best to show that he is fighting someone. He is not going to miss the opportunity given to him to achieve something in life. Fame and fortune, he thinks. The dragon, spewing flames, flies across the sky. He roars deafeningly. Violet fire is visible in the monster's eyes. It seems impossible to control him, says Alex, whose face shows how difficult it is for him. Since it came to this, it can't be helped. The dragon roars desperately. Hundreds of Alex's arms cover his torso. 100 demonic hands, says Alex. The limbs completely absorb the monster within them. Constricting prison, another spell sounds. The dragon no longer roars and wheezes. And now the last thing, says Alex. Heart piercer. A powerful jet of white energy pierces the dragon's heart. The monster emits a terrible roar, continuing to spew flames from itself. Alex realizes that something is wrong. The purple mass he noticed inside the monster crawls out and begins to take over its many arms. Prepare, the demon hears. The many-eyed creature continues to speak individual words that add up to something meaningful. I certainly saw the one who was thought to be dead has returned. This lie. The dragon's eyes emit a purple aura. A creature of the same color suddenly activates. Its mass absorbs Alex, starting from the head. So, that's what it was, says the demon, who is now almost completely surrounded by the purple enemy. Why are you taking so long? Alex, thinks the hero, who is watching his servants battle with the dragon from below. Come on, come down quickly. The audience is already tired of waiting. Demiurgos is frankly bored. Are you making a dragon by hand? Why is it taking so long for you to kill one? There is a desperate battle in the sky between Alex, who has released hundreds of arms, and a dragon, inside of which a strange purple creature lurks. It looks like the exhausted monster is starting to fall to the ground. Failed product, the guy's name is Demiurgos. He readily responds. Get ready, he will fall soon, says the hero, pointing to the sky. Zeke is shaking with fear. Strike so that everyone can see that you did it on time, the demon advises. The receptionist, who looks very ridiculous in his underpants, picks up the mop and says nothing. The dragon's head is engulfed in yellow flames. Sir Deus, says Zeke at last. The hero makes it clear that he is listening to him. I don't want to die, the guy says, looking at the sky with fear. Demiurgos makes a very strange sound, and Zeke is at a loss as to what it could even mean. Fortunately, the hero, looking at him thoughtfully, immediately explains what he thinks about this. Dudes, he says, I promise with my name on the line. No matter what happens, I won't let you die. The guy looks at him through the hole in the pan. We see some kind of bright flash. Zeke clutches the mop shaft tightly. That's right, he thinks, I can do this. Getting ready to act, he shouts very strange words. Moonlight glow, first chapter. Alex, meanwhile, continues to fight the dragon. There is still some part of the vile purple creature's body on his head. Alex screams in horror. It feels like the monster's flesh is penetrating under his skin. But his hands do not give up and continue to resist. The purple entity's eyes glow as if it wants to hypnotize Alex. We see that this creature has its own hands. They cling to the hands released by the demon, trying to overcome them. Alex roars from unbearably intense tension. This is a bit troublesome, he says. The purple tendrils actually penetrate Alex's body. In front of us is a bird's eye view of the village square, with a purple entity visible above it. The demon, who is almost devoured from the inside, casts a spell, 100 demonic hands, and then the following, 1,000 glows whip. You can guess from the purple entity's eye that it worked. Alex grabs the purple mass with his hand, trying to tear it off himself. With great effort, he tears it away from his body. How slowly they are approaching, thinks Demiurgos, looking at the opponents fighting in the sky. Then he begins to worry that the body of the fallen dragon will crush the receptionist standing in his shorts. Alex, meanwhile, continues to pull the vile purple monster away from his face, and it even works out. The dragon descends, making it seem as if it will crash into the village square where Zeke is standing. People looking out of the windows into the sky scream loudly that the dragon is falling and they need to run away from the square. Children call their parents, and they drive them into the basements, where it is probably safer. The receptionist, sweating profusely, still holds his mop at the ready. A huge dragon falls almost on top of the guy, and people scream for him to get out of there. Demiurgos calls him, running up from behind. What are you doing? The hero shouts, looking anxiously at the almost naked receptionist. You should slow down. Then he stops and looks up in fascination. He notices that Alex is tearing off that same purple mass from himself. The dragon is already very close and it may seem that it is falling on Zeke. He holds the mop tightly in his hands and thinks that he will not move, no matter what happens next. I'll strike it down in one move, the guy thinks, looking with wild eyes at the dragon through the holes in his pan. We see the tip of the sword. Watch carefully, Zeke, someone says. Moonlight glow. A little boy with a tiny sword and a baby on his back looks at his mentor with huge eyes. It turns out that this is an elderly man with another child on his back. This sword art is a secret that's been passed down in our family, he says. You should learn this for the time the Demon King's army invades our world. The training takes place in the middle of a green field with tall grass and yellow flowers. The kids in the neighborhood said that I won't be able to participate in the subjugation of the Demon King. That our family. No, Zeke, the man interrupts him. His face is not visible due to the very bright sun. No matter what anyone says, he says, our Holobich family has the holy blood of the hero running through our veins. You will, without a doubt, be a cool hero that participates in the subjugation of the Demon King. So you should learn well, the man says and coughs heavily into his fist. Okay, Dad, says Zeke, smiling. Now he stands with a saucepan on his head and is sweating. Moonlight glow, first chapter. He screams with all his might and, swinging, hits the ground with a mop. Alex finally manages to tear the terrible purple creature away from his face. Demiurgos begins to cast a spell. Dooms. A devilish glint appears in his eyes. Guillotine. Demon King Splitter. In front of the porter, who rushed to attack with his saucepan, something flashes very brightly. The dragon lands exactly in front of Zeke, and the guy strikes at the most opportune moment. The dragon, spewing flames, falls to one side, and a huge amount of purple spray rises into the air next to the receptionist. Stones and bricks fly up from buildings that fall into the dragon's fall zone. Violet splashes appear on the pan covering the hero's head and on his eyelids. Zeke opens his eyes. What he sees shocks him so much that he begins to scream loudly. Something catches the guy's attention and he turns his head. He realizes that he is standing inside a huge black spot that has splattered the entire area. Screams begin to reach his ears. Hero, someone shouts from the side. People look out of the windows and greet the guy. The hero has slain the dragon. The hero has saved us. It's the hero. He was sent to us by God. Zeke, without removing the pan from his head, stands and listens to these delights. He frankly enjoys being the center of attention and is absolutely delighted. Suddenly the guy hears a cough. It's Demiurgos trying to get his attention. Shouldn't you quickly get changed and hide, Sir Masked Hero? The hero asks the guy. Zeke screams in fear, remembering what he needs to do. And then he runs away from the square. From above, from the cross of the local cathedral, Alex looks at him. The left side of his face is a black spot on which some strange symbols are visible. Sparks fall on him from the ongoing fire in the village. Below, next to the houses, the dragon is also burning out. What stands out most are the huge, sharp teeth. The one, who was thought to be dead, has returned. Blue morning sky. How well I slept, says Demiurgos, smiling and stretching sweetly. Are you awake, master? Asks Alex. Please, have a drink. The hero looks at the servant in surprise. They say that humans start off their mornings with a cup of coffee, says Alex. In his hands is a tray with a coffee pot and a sugar bowl. The hero is pleasantly surprised and ready to appreciate the local tradition. Sir Partier, there's a trouble, is heard suddenly in the room, into which someone runs. Sir Partier. The hero looks in bewilderment at the one who said this nonsense. Naturally, this is Zeke. The whole village is out and about looking for the masked hero. Beaming with joy, he shouts, saying things like how they have to make him this village hero. What's wrong with your clothes? Asks Demiurgos, and Zeke looks around himself in surprise. He laughs loudly. The village is in ruins after yesterday's incident, and I helped restore order, he reports. They pay well here for hard manual labor. Well, great, says the hero, sipping from a cup of coffee. Everything is going according to my plan. He closes one eye and looks out the window. Demiurgos enjoys life, waking up to this refreshing sunlight, drinking this fragrant morning coffee. The mornings on the surface are pretty good, he says peacefully. We see that the conversation takes place in a penthouse that is missing a wall and part of the roof. It's coffee made from a dragon's tongue and left eyeball. I'm glad it suits your taste, Alex expresses hope. Below, in the square, there is bustle. People are clearing away the rubble and talking. Move quickly, I need some help here. Oh no, my house. Mommy, where are you? The villagers continue to restore order. We hear their voices. Why is this thing so heavy? Stop being a baby and move quickly unless you want to do this all night. Let's keep it up a bit more. Eat this before you do more work. Move it, you'll get hurt. Now go, someone says and puts a heavy stone in the shoulder box. Come on faster, Zeke. There is still a lot of work here, the hotel administrator shouts, shaking his hand. The receptionist, in dirty shorts and a t-shirt, laughs and says that he will do everything in the best possible way. Demiurgos looks at all this from the outside. They're working so hard to try to rebuild this lackluster village, he thinks. The failed product is working hard too, says the hero. Yes, Alex, standing next to him, answers him. I talked to him yesterday, he says, and he told me that he had been doing hard work since childhood. His family was poor, and raising a hero is very expensive. We see Zeke, smiling happily, carrying a very heavy load. Doing laundry, cleaning, lumbering, grave digging, says Alex. Naming things he hasn't done yet would be faster. He's even worked at a shady bar. Demiurgos listens thoughtfully to his servant. Okay, it's decided, he says. Alex looks questioningly at the hero. Demiurgos, sitting on a hill, looks at the destroyed settlement that lies below him. Since we found a hero and traveling around is annoying. Let's just start in this village, he says. Before us is the lovely settlement in question. It has a lot of greenery and houses next to the sea over which seagulls fly. It's small and insignificant, but I somehow like it, says Demiurgos. It's start of the Deus, the human. The hero smiles, looking down with sympathy where the villagers are bustling about. Well, he says. Alex glances at his master, waiting for him to continue. Let's go too. And let Zeke work if he wants, the newly minted Deus completes his sentence. Where, Alex doesn't understand. The hero laughs joyfully, showing off his sharp fangs. We are going to sell dragon skin, he says. It must be expensive, since armor is made from it. Have you forgotten that we should get into the 2% richest people in this world? Alex reports that the Bureau of Heroes took all the skin in the evening. What? Shouts Deus. He is beside himself with anger. Because the corpses of dragons are so strong, normal people are unable to take them, Alex explains. The hero shakes his fists and jumps with anger. This means that we killed him in vain, he yells. Okay, let's go, he says, having calmed down a little. I beg your pardon, but where? The servant clarifies. Devilish anger appears in the hero's eyes again. To tear down the hero's bureau, he declares. Well, no, Alex thinks. Wait a minute, he shouts, trembling with anger and excitement, at the back of the departing gentleman. The hero's bureau is the main base of the heroes, Alex thinks. No matter how strong my lord is, fighting heroes alone is. And if they find out that the Demon King isn't in the demon realm, it'll be over. Master, he calls the hero to try to rectify the situation. A fake smile appears on his face. Didn't you state that you'll become a companion of the hero? He asks. So what? Deus doesn't understand. In the human realm, you have to register at the hero's bureau to become a hero, Alex reports, continuing to smile. If the hero's bureau to disappear, who would acknowledge Zeke as a hero? Deus is confused and doesn't know what to do or say. Is it true? He asks, scratching his chin thoughtfully. Did I really just prevent the destruction of the demon race? Alex thinks, smiling behind the hero's back. Then let's go there, says the hero, raising his index finger up. What? Where are we going now? Alex asks in amazement. I can just recoup my losses from the country next door, Deus declares, grinning predatorily. What? The servant cannot believe his ears. I thought you were Deus, man. I'll start tomorrow, the hero answers. Went? Maybe we should go back underground, Alex asks timidly. He again drives the cart through the idyllic meadows of this world. The sun is shining, flowers are blooming, butterflies are fluttering. Sir Deus, Alex calls his master. He doesn't answer. Sir Deus, Alex repeats and again does not hear a response. Sir Deus, he shouts loudly, and this time he makes himself known. It seems he even jumped in surprise. You've enjoyed the surface long enough, says Alex, looking sideways at the hero from under his hat. So why don't we head back down? The whole demon realm is waiting for your return. The fated day is 20 years from now. We don't have time to waste like this. You have to hurry and completely learn the Demon King art so that you can take over the world. Deus, yawning, puts his hands behind his head. That's your problem, he replies. I won't do it just because you want me to. A demon king will appear, and he will attack the human realm, says Alex. It's such an obvious thing to do that nobody would think it's mandatory. His face is a little sad. 665 demon kings before you, the whole demon realm, and the humans that are to be attacked all accept it to be as natural as breathing. If everything works out according to the wishes, why would God even be needed, asks Deus, closing his eyes. It's a good experience. Think it over and take it in. There's no demon king anymore. Alex turns sharply to the hero. It doesn't matter who the girl is, he says insistently. At least have a child to be put in the 666th demon king's stead. What? Any girl? Deus tries to laugh it off. How dare you use such words in this time and age? No one would doubt that you're a demon. Shoo, go away, you demon. Alex looks at him with the most serious expression on his face. In any case, I will not leave until you give an heir to the demon kingdom, he says. Well, great, smiles Deus. This only means that you will remain here forever as my servant. Maybe I should look for a wife for you, Alex answers, smiling. I can find the woman who suits you best. If you don't stop, I will go to the kingdom of demons and destroy it with my own hands, the hero calmly answers him. The cart continues its journey through flowering meadows. But does that even work? Asks Deus unexpectedly. What are you talking about? Says Alex, turning around. Does even that princess from before work? The hero says something incomprehensible, and his servant asks him which princess he is talking about. Deus, turning his head dreamily and blushing a little, gives out another portion of fragmentary phrases. Alex turns to him to ask again. I'm talking about pregnancy, Deus suddenly shouts. I'm asking you if humans can be impregnated by demons. Alex is even a little frightened by this explosion of emotions. Naturally, he says, almost crying with joy. We interbreed well with them. The method by which demons and humans mate is exactly the same, Alex begins to tell enthusiastically. Normally, human males create semen with their testicles before shooting them out. Once a sperm cell enters a female's womb, they penetrate the female's egg, bearing a child after 37 to 42 weeks. For some reason, Deus doesn't want to listen to all this. He turned red and a stream of saliva came out of his mouth. Skip the sex education part, he orders, holding out his hand. Okay, says Alex, smiling. He looks intently at his master. Anyway, he says, if my lord really wants to, you are able to make your demonic sperm slowly flow into the other party's body automatically. Deus opens his mouth in surprise. Alex smiles slyly, and so any direct intercourse will lead to pregnancy with a success rate of 99.999%. If it's just a deep kiss, the chances are 50%, he says. Your peck has a 25% chance of getting a girl pregnant. You can get pregnant through just a peck, Deus shouts in bewilderment. Even just you holding hands with a woman can get her pregnant, Alex says, showing his thumb. The hero, who can't wrap his head around all this, is silent in shock. What kind of body is this? He says after a while. It seems that it suddenly became disgusting to him. Demonic semen, he mutters, unable to get over the shock. I almost got in trouble. It's like this body is meant for reproduction. Damn it, this body's purpose is so clear. Kill and have descendants. Deus looks ahead thoughtfully. The more I learn about it, the more I'm starting to dislike it, he says. It's a blessed body, Alex objects, glancing sideways at the hero from under his wide-brimmed hat. You are the hope and savior of our demon realm. It's a perfect body bestowed by God. Blessed, my ass, says Deus, who is still lying in his favorite place in the cart, irritably. I'm just a part that's printed out every 100 years. He looks thoughtfully at the sky. I don't like the feeling of having so much expected of me. The sun is shining brightly above the hero's head. What about my feelings? A loud scream is heard nearby. Deus and Alex look in that direction to understand what it was all about. It turns out that there is some kind of crowd on their cart. A girl in a raincoat and sexy stockings is running ahead, and behind her is a crowd of monsters armed with axes and swords. The girl cries and begs to be saved from the mountain bandits who are pursuing her. "Oh, it's a beautiful lady in distress," says Alex. "Shouldn't you go help her?" "Why should I?" asks Deus, who is lying in the cart with a completely indifferent look. "You never know," says the servant. "Something good might happen." "Don't you think this is a suspicious situation?" the hero asks. "What exactly?" Alex asks in surprise. "She's suddenly running towards us, asking for help," explains Deus, looking out of the cart and watching the events unfold. The situation where the beauty asks for help while being chased is a ranked first cliché of the fantasy genre. What's wrong with it? Alex doesn't understand. We see what is happening from a bird's eye view. "No, there's nothing even blocking the sights surrounding us," says Deus. "Where did they come from? Even if you can see the forest, it's all the way over there. And more importantly," he declares, raising his feet on the barrel, "do you think they wouldn't notice us?" We again see monsters chasing the girl. The entire time they're chasing her, the hero asks a reasonable question. "Neither you nor I noticed them," says Deus. "Is it you," he asks Alex, "who set up this crappy plot?" "What are you talking about?" the servant asks in surprise, turning his head to the hero. "Isn't it you who wants to give me a girl so that I can leave an heir?" Deus clarifies his question. "Just what type or person do you see me as?" Alex asks, smiling. "I'm Alex, the greatest strategist of the demon realm. I wouldn't allow such a bad idea to pass." The girl runs up to the cart and grabs its edge. "Sir Hero, I'm chased by mountain bandits. Please, help me," she begs. Tears are rolling down from her eyes. "I'm not a hero, but a companion of one," Deus answers indifferently, without even looking her in the eyes. The girl sighs in disappointment. But then, with renewed vigor, she begins to beg the hero's companion to help her, because mountain bandits are chasing her. "But we're a high-level party that hunts dragons," says the hero, "so we don't do minor quests like dealing with mountain bandits." The girl utters a dirty curse and lowers her eyes. "Why are you so picky?" she asks. Deus suddenly becomes enraged. "You just swore," he shouts, pointing his finger in the girl's face. "What?" she answers in a trembling voice. "What the F?" "No, Sir Hero's companion. Please, help this weak young maiden." Deus points with his finger where the girl should go, but at that moment a large sharp axe is stuck into the side of the cart. The hero looks at him in surprise. "Hey, kids, don't play around," he tells the bandits. "Just look at his pale face," shouts one of the bandits, bald and with a gray beard. "Get out of here with your crippled cart if you don't want to die." "What kind of clothes are they wearing?" another criminal asks. "Did you come here from the future?" A sad expression appears on the hero's face. "They damaged my precious cart," he says. "Burn for eternity," he says, and it sounds a lot like a spell. The bandits, who have almost reached the girl, are surrounded by a purple glow. One of them screams loudly from unbearable pain. He heartrendingly asks to put out the fire that is burning him. "It cannot be extinguished," Deus says in an ominous voice. The bandits look at him in amazement. "No matter who it is, no matter what magic you use, it will never stop burning, nor will you ever die, simply burning away for eternity, until the end of this world." Deus raises his fingers smoking with purple haze to his face. "Who's next?" he asks. "Who else is gonna join him in burning for eternity?" One of the criminals, sitting on a horse, squeals heart-rendingly, apologizing and begging to forgive him. One of the bandits yells that they have met the devil, the third yells that they need to run away from here to hell. The girl, who sees what is happening to her pursuers, smiles joyfully. "That's it, I saved you," says Deus. "Now get lost somewhere." The girl, who looks at the hero with loving eyes, convinces him to wait a minute. Then she reports that the temple in which she serves has been captured by mountain bandits. The girl holds onto the edge of the cart and, sobbing, looks at the hero with pleading eyes. "All the priestesses have been enslaved, and the holy relic was lost," she says. "Please, get rid of the mountain bandits and save our temple." "No, low-level quests don't interest me," the hero answers her, pointedly picking his nose. "Let's go, Alex," he orders his servant, without removing his finger from his nose, and he says that he understands him. "Wait," the girl screams, and Deus looks at her sideways. "You mentioned dragons earlier, right?" says the girl, smiling charmingly. "Do you happen to be in the company of a hero that's dressed with a piece of cloth?" The temple currently occupied by the mountain bandits is the Peak of the Dragons, the True Gold Dragon's temple. If you help drive away the mountain bandits, we'll reward you with the True Gold Dragon's helmet. Deus picks his nose thoughtfully. "What are you doing?" Someone's voice is heard. "Why are you just standing still?" Someone, breathing heavily, climbs the rocks up the mountain. This is Alex. He calls out to his master. "Yes," he answers, standing on a large stone. The servant slowly approaches the hero, who climbs the mountain much more confidently. "Why can't we just fly where we need to go?" he asks. "Are you crazy?" Deus asks him. "How can we do this? I'm not a demon king." "Then could you carry me on your back?" Alex begs. "Mister, I can't do it anymore, my legs are about to explode." We see the two climbing up a steep staircase onto a very high mountain. "The Demon King cannot compromise his dignity," Deus replies. "But you said that you are no longer the Demon King." But this is indeed very suspicious, says Alex, his face flushed with sweat. He looks at the top of the stairs, where the girl they saved has already reached. She's been running for half an hour and hasn't stopped, Alex says, breathing heavily. And this is along a steep staircase and with a human body. We see that the girl actually moves very easily. She even smiles and hums a song. It doesn't matter who she is, says Deus calmly, who towers over his servant with his hands in his pockets. He turns around in confusion. Ominous lights light up in the hero's eyes. I don't know what she's up to, he says, but if she lied to me about anything, I'll rip her head off. Alex opens his mouth in surprise. Deus looks at the girl who is running ahead. He remembers her words earlier. What did she say about the god of dragons? He asks Alex. Do dragons worship God? No, says Alex, who can barely stand. It's a bit like how you worshipped in the demon realm. The true gold dragon is also the one who stands at the peak of all dragons. Us, the demons, the dragons, and the humans. Every living being in this world only has one god. The one who created this world, the creator. Deus looks thoughtfully at the sky. It turns out that God favors only people, he asks, contemplating the snow-white clouds and the bright sun. Demons and dragons are then just minor characters. Don't doubt him, Alex says. God is the only truth and ideal love. If we can take over Horus, which is personally blessed by the light of God, we will be favored. Before us is the city in question. Deus looks thoughtfully into the distance again. It's a very strange way to show love, he says. Alex's legs are shaking from fatigue. We are there, he says, and falls face down. A weakling, Deus states indifferently and walks forward, stepping on his servant's head. He quacks muffledly. The hero looks ahead. I'll be relying on you on the way down as well, he says. Alex doesn't answer. He tries to get up from the steps to which he was just pinned. Deus and his servant pass between two huge gates into the temple premises. The hero loudly calls the priestess. His eyes glow menacingly. Apparently, he was not joking when he said that he would take the head off the girl if she deceived him. Where are the mountain bandits and the true gold dragon's helmet? He asks. Hand it over while I'm speaking nicely. Alex, divided by, who is trailing a little behind, asks the hero to be careful. It looks like not everything is really clean here. Something is happening behind the demons. They look around. Cuckoo, they hear. We see a familiar girl with snake eyes. She sits with her legs crossed. Almost her entire body is entwined with chains and necklaces with large diamonds. You've done well to get here, she says. Looks like your lackey has better intuition than you. Deus smiles. It seems that you are the mountain bandit who captured the temple. And what about the helmet? Before us are the gods of a girl and a couple of demons against the backdrop of the starry sky far behind them. How dare you run your filthy mouth off? The girl asks. Do you understand the situation you're in? Bow down. This body in front of you is the god of all dragons, Law. The one who rules over all the dragons and, at the same time, the mother of all dragons. The girl's face freezes and becomes quite scary. The only golden dragon, the true gold dragon. Golden Law. Deus opens his mouth in amazement. The god of the dragons, the true gold dragon, says Alex, who stands behind the hero's dog. My lord, we got ourselves caught in a bind. Deus hums thoughtfully. The girl laughs loudly. Were you surprised because it was beyond your lowly self's expectations? Foolish mortal. A yellow haze appears in her eyes. Beg if you are afraid, she says. I am not one to be petty. Deus rubs his chin thoughtfully. The god of dragons, Law. That's amazing, he says. Do you finally understand now? The goddess asks, still with the same expression on her face. Then, as your sign of apology, I will command you to do something for me. What? What are you talking about? Deus asks, starting to pick his nose again. Law of the dragons or mother of the dragons or something. I'm just saying I want a cool title like that too. Law clearly didn't expect to hear something like that. I've always felt that something's lacking when I introduce myself, the hero continues, watching over everything from the world's darkness, the top 2% of deep, dark, alpha males. How's that, Alex? The demons giggle happily and the servant claps his hands. It was cool, my lord, he says. The goddess calls out to them and makes a strange gesture with her foot. She smiles. Stop talking nonsense, she tells the hero. Ask for forgiveness quickly. Don't you have anything to apologize for? Deus pretends to think, after which he says that he does not remember his guilt in relation to his interlocutor. Law angrily points a bent finger at the hero. Didn't you kill the dragon yesterday? She asks. I am the mother of all dragons. You killed my child. You're causing such a ruckus just because of that? Deus asks, smiling. It seems that he finally pissed off the goddess. We see her hand with a diamond jewelry. A whirlwind of fire, light and diamonds appears around the hero. Just because of that. She looks the hero straight in the eye. I hope you have a dying wish, she says. This place is the Golden Jade Realm. We see how powerful the whirlwind surrounds the hero. The goddess's eyes shine brightly. Even if you're the Demiurgos, you stand no chance against me in this place. The Golden Jade Realm, Alex shouts, trying to hold his hat in the middle of a fiery whirlwind. My lord, this place is the territory of the true golden dragon. We're inside her domain. Fighting her here is dangerous. A disgusting smile appears on Law's face. Your lackey is very smart, she says to the hero. Hurry up and kneel before me, 666th. Are you doing this even though you know who I am? Asks Deus. A questioning expression appears on the goddess's face. The hero's eyes burn with red devilish fire, and there is a predatory smile on his face. If you're the true golden dragon, he says, I can just take your face to use, right? Prepare your face, since I'll be ripping your skin off your face. Law looks at his opponent in surprise. Do you dare? Law looks at the hero in fear. But first, he says, would you like to apologize for deceiving me? Deus puts his index finger in front of his nose. What are you talking about? The goddess asks angrily. No, honestly, the hero begins to explain, standing right in front of Law. She seems ready to listen. I didn't come to Earth to cause trouble, says Deus. I just quietly went to the village with the intention of becoming a hero's companion. The hero stands completely calm, he doesn't even take his hands out of his pockets. But all of a sudden your child showed up in the village, started a fire, and destroyed all the buildings. See, what should I do? We must defeat it in self-defense. The goddess listens to the hero in silence, albeit not with the most pleasant expression on her face. You didn't show up when your own child was making a mess, Deus continues. And now you show up to us who are just sitting still. You fooled us around by pretending to be a shaman and a bandit. And then you suddenly claim to be the goddess of dragons and demand that I apologize. Deus boldly looks into the eyes of the goddess. Do you really think, he asks, that I'm going to fall on my knees in front of you and start begging? Oh, goddess of dragons, forgive me, I won't do it again. Well, if you are the god of dragons, is it okay for you to do as you please? Are dragons really like that? This fiery speech seems to impress the goddess. What? She asks, confused. Alex joins the conversation, standing a little to the side. He is right, he declares. It is extremely arrogant to think that what you say is always right just because you have power. The same fire burns in the servant's eyes as his master's. It is natural for anyone in the world to fight against others for their own safety, he says. Moreover, the dragon side was the one who forgot the peace agreement and violated it. This is a situation where you have to ask for forgiveness. So, as the dragon goddess, you apologize to the Zorix villagers. It seems that the goddess really wants to escape from the overly eloquent demons. What? She asks helplessly again. I'll tell you what, Deus continues. We all understand perfectly well that if a child commits a crime, then his parent is to blame. I'm not their real mother, the goddess tries to justify herself, sweating with excitement. Are you trying to evade responsibility? Alex asks. The goddess gasps in surprise, not knowing where to hide her eyes. It turns out strange, you don't want to be responsible for anything, but at the same time you want to enjoy power. Two demons, standing in the middle of a fiery whirlpool, literally drive the enemy crazy with their speeches. Hey, have you seen the Golden Realm? Asks Deus. Just because the kids are a problem doesn't mean the parents are always the problem, you know. Don't you know that? You see, they don't care about their children at all on a regular basis. But when something happens, they take their children's side again. It's because of a few parents like you that all parents are getting cursed at. This is not an issue to just ignore, Alex picks up. As the representative of the dragons, god of dragons, you should apologize for violating the peace agreement because one of the dragons. You should take responsibility and resign, right? Blood flows from the goddess's ears. That's all, she asks, scratching her head. Why do I have the feeling that I have done something wrong to these demons? That's right, you did something wrong, says Deus. And now, with your permission, we will leave. He turns around and leaves. Alex follows him. Wait, the goddess shouts after them. Still, while you're here, shouldn't you listen to my request? She seems to be starting to come to her senses after the verbal attack she endured. Deus turns his face to her. First, apologize, he demands, looking at her with honest eyes. Law gasps in surprise. Don't be afraid, the hero says calmly. It's not scary at all and you won't lose anything. Wait, sounds the voice of the goddess standing behind the hero. He waits for what she will say next. I'm sorry. The goddess, the vortex around whom has almost disappeared, stands guiltily in front of the two demons. Deus puts his hand on her head. Law, it seems, didn't expect this at all. Okay, I don't seem to need this, but if you are forced to apologize, I will gladly accept it, says Deus, not letting go of the goddess's heads. This, of course, is a little strange, but I'll pretend I didn't notice, says Law, because I'm generous. The hero laughs. Okay, what do you want, dragon head? He says, smiling welcomingly. But the goddess is not happy. She has a very serious face. In short, she says, you have to hunt dragons. Deus is very surprised. Then the true gold dragon, who is the god of dragons, the law, and the mother. The hero's face turns red, either from the listing of titles or from the realization of the absurdity of the goddess's request. asks me, the Demon King, to hunt the dragons, her own children. Yes, says the goddess hesitantly. Do you think I'm an idiot? This is obviously a trap. Do you want me to believe that nonsense? You really out of your mind, you little punk? Deus screams loudly and waves his fists. No, it's not like that, the goddess, who cowered in fear, tries to convince him. Is it because of that purple mycelium thing? Alex asks her. Hearing these words, Deus turns to his servant in surprise. It was attached to the dragon's body, he explains calmly. Something like a strange mycelium. We see exactly what he means. It seemed to be taking over his consciousness, says Alex. The goddess pulls out the hand that the hero was holding and irritably hits him in the chest with her elbow. She starts talking. There's something wrong with us right now. These hardliners who reject the peace agreement signed with humans. The hero asks who she means, and the goddess replies that the dragon killed yesterday was one of the victims of the side she named. Laud is clearly very concerned about something. The hardliner is a group who have suffered at the hands of humans, she says, looking up at the sky, such as losing their beloved women or having their children hunted for weapons. But anyway, we have to be neutral. The demons silently look at the goddess. But these guys end up blinded by anger, she says. They're attacking the town by infecting children living in peace with very powerful and strange magic that I've never heard of before to start a war between humans and dragons once again. So you should catch them first. The demons silently listen to her story, so that innocent children no longer die miserably while being used as tools of war, she says sadly in conclusion. I understand what you're talking about, says Deus, smiling. He still doesn't take his hands out of his pockets. It's called hunting, but a troublemaker called Hardliner is manipulating an otherwise peaceful dragon, driving it to madness or some sort of aggression, and sending suicide terrorists to attack humans. And you want me to catch them first before they get killed by humans. Is this so? He asks, looking at the goddess. Yes, she answers, straightening up to her full height in front of the demons. How are you going to repay me? Asks Deus. The goddess is silent, not knowing what to answer. The hero, smiling, insists. There must be a fee for my services, he says. What do you want? The goddess asks angrily. 5 dragon scales, Deus replies, duplicating the information with widely spaced fingers. Since ancient times it has been said that weapons are made of dragons, he declares, showing off his hand. Every time I catch one, I will take off 5 scales. That's okay, right? In addition, there are weapons and armor worth 1,000 gold based on the selling price that were refined with dragon breath. How about it? Asks the hero. The goddess, surrounded by her precious necklaces, is silent in confusion. You're a complete fraud, right? She finally asks. Tears are rolling down her cheeks. Think what you want, says Deus and snaps his fingers. Before us is the text of the contract that he proposes to sign. Deus will do the job, and the golden dragon will pay for it. 1. Job description: catch and punish the dragons that are causing trouble in human towns and castles, and hand them over to the golden dragon. 2. Price: 5 dragon scales per dragon, and weapons worth 1,000 gold will be paid by the morning of the next day after completing the task. If this contract is violated, you will become Deu's slave. The goddess reads the text and tries to understand what it all means to her. If you say your name, the contract will be considered concluded, says the hero, smiling. It's a deal with the devil, so don't try to cheat, because your soul is on the line. The goddess looks angrily at the hero. I understand that perfectly well, she says. Damn you. The goddess identifies herself, although her face shows disgust for the hero. The god of dragons, golden dragon. Deus grins predatorily. The contract is concluded, he says, looking straight at the goddess. The demons turn around and head for the exit. Open the door, says the hero. We will do all the work in a few days. Devil, the goddess calls him. What? Deus asks, turning around. Please, says the girl, lowering her eyes. Catch them alive. She looks at the hero with pleading eyes. No more deaths needed. Deus smiles. The client's desire is law for me, he replies. Deus, giggling, leaves the temple. The demons begin to descend the stairs. Well, that everything went unexpectedly well, yes, he asks Alex. That's right, he answers. Suddenly Deus turns around and runs back to the temple. Alex looks at him in surprise. Goddess of dragons, the hero shouts indignantly. But the doors of the temple were already closed. What are you doing? Alex asks the hero. Damn, she didn't give me the true gold dragon helmet, he shouts, literally going crazy with rage. We can't go back to the golden jade now because we're not dragons, Alex tells the hero. He can't calm down, he jumps and spins with excitement. Sneaky dragon, he yells, you fooled me again. The demon's cart stands at the foot of the mountain they climbed. Someday definitely I'll rip your skin off your face, Deus shouts angrily. An arms dealer, someone asks angrily inside the destroyed hotel we see in front of us. Yes, Deus answers happily, folding his hands in front of his face. But why? Asks Alex. Zeke, who is standing next to the demons, is trying to understand what they are arguing about here. Why are you suddenly an arms reeler again? Shouts an enraged Alex. Did you abandon us all and come to Earth just to sell us a few weapons? Zeke tries to restrain the hero's servant before he does something stupid. Did you feel anything when humans hunted dragon babies and made weapons? Alex shouts, pointing his finger in his master's face. It's just business, you brainless idiot, Deus replies to his servant. Dragon scale monopoly is the weapon that the true gold dragon gives. Oh my god, how many kills will this get me? I knew it right away. Am I already in the top 2%? The hero rubs his finger under his nose and makes some calculations in his head. It seems he already sees himself as an incredibly rich demon. She says she'll give me a bunch of weapons if I just catch dragons. Isn't this a total freebie, he declares. War breaks out every 100 years, so isn't the arms trade the best business that can never fail? No, if there is no devil, there is no war, right? Come to your senses, Alex calls the hero, shaking him by the shoulder. Catching a dragon was free, Zeke thinks, scratching the back of his head, watching the dialogue of the demons. And you, idiot, still don't know who am I? Asks the hero, who also starts screaming. The already familiar devilish fire lights up in his eyes. The arms dealer is just a source of funds for the real plan, he says. I have no intention of living as a businessman for the rest of my life. Did you forget? Deep dark watching from the dark and a man with all the weapons in the world. As expected, that's what it is. Deus looks intently into the eyes of his servant. You didn't forget the underworld. So quickly take the defective product and find a useful store. Depart, he shouts in a frantic voice. Alex grabs the receptionist and runs off to carry out the order. He moves at a pretty decent speed. Why do I continue to do business? Deus thinks. Naturally, the ultimate goal is to build a building. The hero's face is very unpleasant to look at, including because of the snot flowing from his nose. The best building owner in the fantasy world. Alex, I'm glad you're an idiot. Deus spins the boots with which he climbed onto the bed. He lies with his hands behind his head. The sun shines brightly on him through a huge hole in the roof. The hero likes to feel the rays of the star on his face. He remembers what happened to him before. A flying cross on the roof of the cathedral. The receptionist who talks about how he has an F rank and is just a defective product. Then there was a fight with a dragon, and a meeting with the goddess who asked to catch her children alive. Deus seems to be falling asleep. He looks at the sun through the crack in the roof and thinks that he has already created a stable stream of cash income and saved the stupid hero. His original goal has, by and large, been achieved. Now he can do nothing and just get rich. But, what is this emptiness? Blood and carnage. Would it make me feel any better if I killed and crushed all the humans in this town? Deus sees the crossed out face of the receptionist. Thoughts and pictures flash through his falling asleep brain. Kill them all. Destroy the world. Make mankind your slaves. Make Earth hell. Then you'll end the reincarnation of being reborn and dying every 100 years in the underground where the sun no longer shines. Deus seems ready to go to sleep. His eyes close. Get some sleep and shut up. Morning comes. Here he is, says the character whose legs we see. In front of us is a dilapidated building with cracked walls, to which stairs lead. A new weapon shop to run. The owners died during the dragon invasion and we purchased it at low price. We see that this information was reported by Alex, who is standing on the stairs next to the hero stretching after sleep. Well, not bad, says Deus. You quickly found what you needed. I didn't even get a good night's sleep. Once I heard the real plan, I should be so exited that I can't sit still, says Alex, smiling. Deus laughs, replying that they are indeed fighting for the real plan. It seems to me that our store would be very nice if we asked Zeke to renovate the building, Alex says thoughtfully, inspecting the purchase. Can he do the job? Asks Deus. Yes, he said he worked as a carpenter. The hero, looking at his future store, admits that for his young age he is truly an amazing young man. But isn't blood level something that is passed down from generation to generation? Asks Deus, looking at his servant. I mean, even if pure-blooded people have children, the child can still be F grade. Yes, on the contrary, there are quite a few examples where the child born between an F-class hero and a saint becomes the last person standing, Alex answers. The demons still stand in front of the dilapidated building they purchased. In general, everything here is random, says Deus. His servant confirms his guess. Then, there's no hope for defective products, asks the hero, whose back of the head we see. Just because the family is grade F, shouldn't the child just be labeled as grade F? That's also ambiguous, Alex answers. He looks very impressive in his wide-brimmed hat. Although it is not a skill, but property is inherited, he says. A family that frequently produces high-ranking warriors or saints will have wealth equivalent to that of a king. Alex smiles. With that money you can raise your child's hero level or blood level in various ways. So, on the other hand, if you get an F, it's hard for your child to shine if he or she doesn't get an F, is that right? Asks the hero, looking up. Yes, Alex answers him. And since Zeke himself said he was an F grade, but he must have already been ranked as a hero. Deus looks ahead thoughtfully. Do you know what I'm thinking about now? He asks the servant standing next to him. No, he answers. About why demons are always defeated by creatures whose heroism is determined by such a pathetic and insignificant factor as the presence of money. He becomes enraged and grabs Alex by the throat. Why? Speak up, bastard. The servant screams loudly, begging for forgiveness. Deus calms down a bit, although his face is still red with anger. Let's end this conversation, he says. In any case, the demon world doesn't interest me anymore. By the way, where did our hero go? He asks. This is. Here we have noodles, which with all the additives looks very appetizing. We see part of the sign. It totally looks like warrior noodles. Selling the food is none other than Zeke. He notices the hero and, smiling, asks him why he woke up so early. Deus and Alex approach the counter. Why did you suddenly decide to start selling noodles? Asks the hero. I had a little time, the guy answers. Why not? Moreover, the pay here is pretty decent. The hero is attracted by the aroma of food and sits down on a barrel, which is here instead of a chair. Give me some noodles, he orders, placing his hands on the counter. Yes, master, Zeke answers. He puts noodles in boiling water. Then he throws vegetables in there. Then he pours the finished dish into a plate and gives it to the hero. These are noodles, Deus asks in surprise. He picks up the pasta with chopsticks. He puts them in his mouth and swallows it. Deus serves his feelings, after which he says that it is incredibly tasty. This is a real delicacy, he shouts enthusiastically. Is it true? Alex asks. Then give it to me too. Having received his portion, the hero's servant greedily eats the noodles. You can see from his face that he is completely delighted. The demons unanimously praise the young cook. Zeke, you don't have to become a hero, they tell him. Become a chef. I take this as a compliment, Zeke says, smiling. He scratches the back of his head in embarrassment. We see that the guy is very pleased to see such a reaction to his work. Master, thank you very much, he says to the hero, who is choking on incredibly tasty noodles. Thanks to you, I was able to buy a school uniform for my younger brothers who went to the warrior school, he says. It really bothered me that they were the only two in the whole school without a uniform. Zeke smiles sincerely. These guys act all nonchalant, but they really become happy when you give them money. School of Warriors, asks Deus, who is sucking in another pasta. Yes, this may sound presumptuous, but I am sending them both to a private warrior elementary school, says Zeke, smiling. I may not be strong, but I'm confident that they can become real warriors, so I'll invest in them. Look, there's a fly in my soup. Suddenly it's coming from somewhere on the side. Deus and Zeke turn their gazes to whoever said this. Before us is an angry middle-aged man. He has a very unpleasant face and is holding a bowl of noodles in his outstretched hand. Damn it, he yells. I always tried to avoid this nasty restaurant, but today I was hungry and decided to stop by. So what did I get? The girl who stands next to him says that she warned him not to eat in this pigsty. Sorry, sir, Zeke is trying to justify himself, but there are no flies here. At the same second, a plate of noodles flies at the guy. He manages to cover himself with his hand. Deus looks sideways at the brawler. What? Are you saying that I'm lying? He shouts, his mouth wide open. His companion smiles with satisfaction. You bastard, do you even know who my father is? The buyer yells. If I tell him what happened here, this filthy place will be closed today. Then he recognizes the guy and freezes for a second. Hold still, isn't this the Holly Beach family? He asks. You mean that family? That was important? The girl asks him. Visitors to the establishment sitting at the tables look at the guy in surprise. They start talking to each other. Holly Beach is still there. Oh my god, the Holy Beach family. What the heck? Since when did the heroes become chefs? Not Beach, it's bitch, says Zeke sadly, with the noodles still on his head. I knew it, the dissatisfied client shouts, laughing maliciously. This is a poor family. His father came to my house and asked me to give him at least some work. His companion seems to be in complete ecstasy from this behavior of her gentleman. And now you little bastard are selling this slop on the street. Those are the freaks. Like father, like son. Zeke, not knowing where to escape from these humiliations and insults, simply stands still and does not even try to remove the noodles that lie on his head. You are a hero too? Yes, the bastard is teasing him. And you sell hero noodles. The man laughs loudly. He is stopped only by a loud slam of his hand on the table. What kind of fly is here preventing me from eating properly? Asks Deus, turning to face the offender of his charge. Zeke calls out to him, trying to prevent a scandal. But the scoundrel is already wound up. You called me a fly, right? Maybe you want to slap me, he shouts. Deus extends his hand forward with his fingers spread. The man and his companion look at her as if hypnotized. Let's kill some flies, says the hero. His eyes begin to glow. The guy who abused him turns into a shapeless lump, from which unnaturally twisted or broken arms and legs protrude. Zeke looks at what is happening in horror. The companion of the punished scoundrel screams loudly, her mouth wide open. Then she runs away, sobbing and begging to be saved. One runs away, says Deus. A black hole with a purple edge appears inside his outstretched arm. The girl, who just recently rejoiced with the most disgusting look at the disgusting behavior of her companion, now lies next to him with broken arms and legs. We see a clenched fist. It belongs to the hero who brought him forward. People who don't respect the heroes, who risk their lives to fight on their behalf, he says, don't deserve to enjoy the earth. Alex looks at his boss silently. As if nothing had happened, he turns back to the counter and begins to finish the noodles. Let's eat, he says. Ah, yes, not understanding anything, Zeke answers. A sheet of paper appears above the head of the hero greedily devouring noodles. It falls straight into the plate, forcing the demon to stop eating. It says the following: dragons have appeared in the Lee Castle. You must depart immediately. Yulgum. Deus decisively puts his chopsticks on the table. Defective product, close your restaurant, he says smiling. It's the first mission for our VIP customer. Let's go make money. Yes, sir, Zeke answers happily. Night over the mountains. The horse's legs are in front of us, who are transporting a cart somewhere, in which Deus, Alex and Zeke are sitting with his saucepan on his head. Alex sees that the guy is shaking with fear, holding the mop shaft in his hands. Zeke looks back at the hero and sees with amazement that he is calmly lying in the back of the cart. Moreover, according to his disgusting habit, he picks his nose. I don't know if you'll believe me or not, the guy says to Alex, but when I look at the master, for some reason I feel an absurd sense of confidence. Something like I can defeat any dragon. He smiles, holding the pan on his head. Although I know that I will shake with fear when I see this monster. It's a good mindset, says Alex, smiling. Zeke, no matter what you think of yourself, the master was chosen you as a hero. Now Sulga very seriously looks before by yourself. I don't know about other times, but when we're on an adventure. Zeke looks on interlocutor, widely opening mouth. You, our leader, Zeke, so be brave, says Alex. Yes, I understand, the guy answers. You speak too quietly for a leader, Alex says, smiling. Oh, yes, we've almost reached the castle, hold on tight, a voice sounds over the road. Okay, here's the answer. The cart wheels are spinning quickly. Zeke screams loudly, trying to stay on it. The guy notices something, and his eyes become round, either from surprise or from fear. Above the castle, against the backdrop of the moon, a gigantic dragon is visible. How huge he is, shouts Zeke. We see a purple parasite on the head of the monster with brightly glowing eyes. Zeke turns to Alex and tries to say something. The castle has already been captured, he shouts. What happened to the residents? Don't panic, Deus, who had been silent until now, tells the guy. They're gathered over there. The hero points his finger at this place. In a castle of this size there should be several G-class warriors, so, apparently, the evacuation was successful, confirming the words of Alex's boss. What a relief, says Zeke, looking at the snowy landscape. The stage is ready, and it seems like all the onlookers have gathered, declares enthusiastically Deus, it's showtime. Get ready, the legendary product. What? Asks Zeke. There is joy in his eyes. He does not believe that he was called that way. Damn it, Alex exclaims, hearing a loud cough from one of the nearby rocks. We see that quite a decent number of people have gathered here. They are freezing in the terrible cold and are trying to somehow warm up. Before heroes are heard their words. Suddenly a dragon. The world is in ruins. Give the blankets to the injured. I feel like I'm going to die from cold. Don't fall off, stick close. God, please, give us the hand of salvation. Damn it, can you stop praying? The loudest sound can be heard of an old man who is trying to interrogate something from God. Please stop this blizzard, he begs, shedding tears and snot. God, you really left us. They ask him to shut up, but it doesn't help. I don't know what it is about God, but at least the king has decided to leave us and live alone, they tell the old man. Oh, God, he screams and begins to sob even harder. In front of us is a hand that seems to be trying to stop something. Next to it is part of an energy-emitting sphere. Oh, how hot it is, someone says. We see a huge army, a king with a huge belly sitting above him and a priest who, raising his hand, mutters spells known to him alone. Hey, what happened to the heroes who went to the Seong Hwang fortress for a rescue request? Shouts Monarch, on head at whom huge crown. I want them to go back to the castle quickly. A priest in a pointed headdress tells the king that it seems they have all fallen victim to a terrible frost. There is no way he can contact them through his magic. The monarch, sputtering with saliva, demands the priest to do at least something. He says he will go crazy if he stays in this place. Suddenly, some sounds in the command forward reach him. The king, clinging to the priest, glances in the direction from where these sounds are coming. He sees a hero who, like the first time, went out to fight the dragon only in shorts and a strange cloak. Armed Zeke, as then, only with a mop. The hero is here, shouts Deus. Judging by the guy's eyes, which are visible through the holes in the pan, he is very determined. The cart jumps into the air and rushes over the head of the king, who screams loudly and has not yet covered his bare belly with anything. Hero. The monarch's amazement knows no bounds. Slobbering and sweating, he looks up to see horses and an archaic vehicle flying above him. Everyone around him is also completely shocked by what is happening. No, he's just a pervert who likes to walk around in his underpants, comes from the cart. He is running away. Catch him, the king shouts. How ashamed I am, Zeke thinks to himself. Hey, it's already cold here, the king shouts to the priest who is kneeling in front of him. Let's quickly activate your magic again, he orders. He replies that he will do everything now. How dare you jump over the emperor, the monarch shouts, splashing with saliva after the retreating cart. I really hope the dragon kills you. Before us are freezing refugees again. The child, held in his mother's arms, raises his finger and shows her what is in the sky. What is this? The woman asks in amazement. Is he going to fight a dragon in his underpants? We see that the cart is rushing towards a giant dragon, which towers over a castle located on a high rock. The freezing refugees look at what is happening in front of them in disbelief. It can't be that this is a hero, they think, looking at Zeke, who in his shorts is rushing towards the monster, holding out a very ordinary mop in front of him. The guy is very cold. He looks at Alex from under his saucepan and says that he is freezing and feels great shame at the same time. Thank you for your hard work, he replies. Zeke looks in shock at the pictures floating past him. This is a lot of people who froze to death without having time to get to a warmer place. Opening his mouth in amazement, he looks up, where a white flash appeared. Zeke understands that the dragon is already very close, and the battle with him will begin any minute. Alex, legendary product, get ready, Deus orders, and the guy turns his head towards the hero. Through the holes in the pan you can see that he is scared. We act like last time, says the hero. Alex will catch it and throw it in front of you. Then you will swing the mop in time, like last time, and we will end this vulgar performance. It's clear. Zeke, streams of snot pouring from his nose, looks at his commander in amazement. As for you, Alex, he says quite calmly to his servant. Don't make me do what I did last time. Don't worry, master, smiling, he answers. Alex extends his finger, and in the place where he points, a crack appears in space. The demon rises, and he gets on board the cart. Last time, he says, his eyes sparkling, I was a little confused because I didn't immediately understand what state he was in. But now I won't repeat this mistake. Daze calls out to Alex. He silently makes it clear that he is listening. The hero looks at his servant with a stern look. Don't kill him, he says. Capture him alive. Okay, he replies, I'll only kill him half. Alex's eyes glow ominously. Zeke, calling the frozen guy Alex. This guy is very big, and I think it's going to be very loud, he warns, smiling. Please stay still and take a good position. I knew it, Zeke thinks. Okay, see you later, Alex says, and hides in the crack he just created. What? Very loud. Good position. The guy, who does not fully understand what he needs to do, tries to stop Alex, but he no longer hears him. Legendary product, stop the carriage, Deus orders him. The guy looks around in surprise. I want to sleep a little, says the hero, turning on his side. Make sure everything is fine. Zeke confused, but he tries to say what, and the hero opens his eyes to listen to him. There is an incredibly loud roar of a dragon above, which Alex has apparently already reached. Could you come with me, begs the hero Zeke. I think I'm about to wet myself. As expected, the guy was horrified when he met the dragon in person. The parasite that had taken over the dragon's body moved its red eyes in different directions. All eyes froze and looked up in surprise when they heard a loud scream calling them. Alex appeared high above, emerging from a portal, and jumped down, heading straight towards the roaring dragon. The parasite began to stretch its limbs forward in the form of tentacles. The parasite directed its attack at Alex, but the man skillfully maneuvered among the tentacles, while also kneading magical blows to the dragon's body. The dragon roared and fell onto the cold ice. Zeke, being at some distance, looked at this, and his hand holding the broom was shaking from the cold. His eyes widened, his face turned red in embarrassment, and puffs of steam came out from his mouth. He thought enthusiastically that this was simply amazing. After the dragon hit the ground, white smoke mixed with snow rose. Zeke thought that because of the smoke he could not see anything at all. He wondered if it could be considered that everything had already begun. Frowning his face, the guy began to look sharply around. He thought he needed to find a place where Alex could spot him quickly. A loud voice suddenly rang out, calling the guy a fucking hero. A round wooden shield flew at him. Without expecting it, he managed to catch it with his own hands. Deus threw his hand behind his head and looked at the guy with a relaxed face. He noted that Zeke had already forgotten the shield, which he himself had been carrying all the way, saying that the hero should at least have a shield. Deus noted that these words were instructions from the boy's father. The Demon King moved his palm forward, and a bolt of energy began to appear from his index finger, which quickly headed towards the shield, causing Zeke to be surprised. Deus said he forgot to do something. Violet energy began to sparkle throughout the shield's body, and Zeke looked at it with a surprised and delighted look. Deus looked at him, and opened his mouth wide. He said it was a protective barrier. The white-haired guy added that this barrier should withstand a dragon strike. Zeke smiled joyfully, and tears of joy began to appear on his face. He thought that he needed to thank Deus. When he opened his mouth to say words of gratitude, he saw Deus already sleeping soundly in the cart, snoring loudly. Zeke kicked off the cart and ran back. Mentally, he wished Sir Deus sweet dreams. The boy quickly ran into the abyss of events, holding his broom in one hand and a magical shield in the other. He thought excitedly that this time he would definitely not screw it up. He thought that he had to hurry as he couldn't keep Sir Alex waiting. Continuing to run, Zeke opened his eyes wide and turned his head in different directions. He reflected that he needed an easy and visible place. He thought that this place must be somewhere high and central. His attention was drawn to a tall ice floe with a rounded ledge. He thought this place would be very suitable. Zeke accelerated and began to run in that direction. He thought he should be faster. Then the boy screamed in surprise. He slipped on the icy ground and fell face down, traveling some distance with a loud cry. Standing on the head of the fallen dragon, Alex struck the parasite with his hand. When wounded, the parasites gave out a loud roar. Alex took a step forward, stepping on one of the many eyes. He plunged his wrist into the parasite's body again. He pulled out his hand, and his gaze showed confidence and dissatisfaction. The parasite's eyes widened and glowed red. Alex spread his fingers with long claws wide, and a moment later the dragon opened its mouth wide, attacking the man with magical spit. The dragon rose to its paws again. He opened his wings and soared into the sky with a loud roar. The flapping of the wings created a cloud of dust and snow. A moment later, a long, clawed purple hand began to squeeze through this cloud with a sharp movement. A hand that stretched to a huge length grabbed the dragon by the fang, thereby slowing it down, which led the magical creature into confusion. Alex, whose red spots with hieroglyphs began to appear, held tightly to the dragon and rose up. He pulled himself up and delivered a powerful kick to the creature, disorienting it in space. Alex climbed onto the dragon's head, resting his feet firmly on its long fangs. The man, whose one hand had been replaced by several purple clawed limbs, raised them sharply to strike. Flashing his burning eyes, he quickly directed his limbs into the body of the parasite. From the blow, the dragon, losing control of its own body, crashed into an icy mountain. Alex took a few steps and stopped not far from the head of the fallen creature, which was emitting a quiet roar. The snowstorm blew the white hair of the man, who held his magical hands at the ready in different directions. He noted displeasedly that the magical creature was very tenacious and then asked if it was because of its size. As the man began to come closer to him, the dragon opened its mouth and roared loudly. With his eyes flashing on his face, which was increasingly covered with magical spots, Alex raised his hands to attack. He said it was time to finish. A moment later, Zeke, who was at a considerable distance from what was happening, was able to observe a powerful blow, due to which pieces of the mountain began to fly off in all directions like huge cobblestones. Looking at it, he thought it was just wonderful. With a broom and shield in his hands, he climbed onto the ice ledge. The guy thought that he was scared to be here. He mentally admired the fact that Sir Alex alone could cope with the dragon. He looked at it with a flushed face and wide open eyes and mouth. Zeke wondered if Alex was actually a D-rank hunter. He glanced to the side, hearing a loud sound behind him at some distance. The local residents, hiding on the mountainside from the attacking dragon, loudly rejoiced, shouting and clapping their hands. The crowd pushed each other in different directions to give themselves a clear view of what was happening. People shouted loudly that the hero had come to save them, wished him good luck, and joyfully said that God had heard their prayers. People shouted joyfully, waving their hands in the air. They cheered loudly for their hero's victory. The fat man nervously tapped his nails against his teeth. He asked if this boy was a hero. Zeke looked at the locals with wide eyes and his face flushed red again. He thought happily that everyone was cheering him on. He turned away, directing his gaze forward again. However, loud cries saying that he will succeed and they believe in him did not subside. Still standing on the ledge on shaky legs, he watched as the fierce battle between the dragon and Alex continued on the mountain ahead. He thought about who the real hero is here. He thought that this was definitely not him, shaking with fear. He thought that he was very jealous of Alex. He straightened up, holding a shield with a broom in his hands. Zeke excitedly thought that he wanted to be just like him. He thought that he wanted to become a real hero and save people and give them hope. The boy turned in surprise when he heard a voice behind him. Someone quietly asked him for help. Turning his body around, he saw two people freezing from the cold in each other's arms. The man, without signs of life, hugged his wife tightly, and thick ice growths had already formed on their bodies. In a trembling voice, the girl asked the hero for help. The dragon's long tail swung out to attack. Alex, having received a strong blow from the creature, flew to the side. Zeke turned his head with a frightened expression on his face, watching the man. Alex grouped himself as he fell and landed neatly on a block of ice. Flashing his burning eyes, the man shook his magical limb and tutted displeasedly. The dragon's clawed paw dug into the stone ground. Descending after the man, he spread his wings wide and roared loudly. The parasite continued to spread more and more throughout his head. After a long roar, a spell began to emerge to save the dragon. Alex landed on his haunches, clutching his large limb in a fist. He asked if the parasite would regenerate until the host died. He asked if this was his strength. Red spots with hieroglyphs began to spread increasingly across his face, and he cast a dissatisfied glance at the creature. He said it looked more like a zombie dragon. The ice dragon straightened up, spreading its wings. Dissatisfied with the burning red light, Alex narrowed his eyes and said that since it was impossible to kill the dragon, he had only one option left. He said that he would just have to cut off all the excess. The dragon pushed off the stone surface with its paws. Soaring into the air, he quickly rushed towards Alex, opening his mouth wide. The creature was quickly approaching the man, who was squatting on a hill. The man's angry gaze flashed with a bright red light. He loudly cast a spell, summoning 100 hands. Many long, clawed limbs began to form behind his back. Hands rushed towards the loudly growling approaching dragon. Alex said that they were all. Long arms began to intertwine together, forming a huge limb. The man shouted that they should all form into one. The huge purple hand clenched its palm into a fist. The demonic hand swung and moved with a sharp movement towards the ice dragon. The fist hit the monster on the head, right in the place where the parasite existed on it. The huge hand moved back, splashing blue blood. Alex loudly reads a spell to 100 demonic hands. Behind his back, many of the same huge giant limbs formed, which directed their fists at the ice dragon. Alex shouted a spell that created a hellish hammer from his hands. A giant hand quickly approached the dragon and grabbed its head. A hand formed from Alex's many limbs grabbed the dragon and began squeezing its neck with all its might. The dragon began to accumulate energy in its mouth for a magical strike. Noticing this, Alex began to wrap his arms around his body, creating protection. The dragon tilted its head and shot a stream of powerful ice energy at the man, hitting everything around him. Zeke, hit by the shock wave and trying to descend from the icy slope, flew up. With a loud cry, the boy rolled head over heels down the snowdrifts. Having fallen to the ground, Zeke began to cough loudly, covering one eye. Alex was completely wrapped in magic, which helped him avoid any injuries. The man flashed an evil burning gaze, looking out from the crevice between his hands. In a low voice, he noted with displeasure that it was time to end all this. The dragon, whose head was being held by the hand, opened its mouth wide and a loud spell began to come out of it. Alex's eyes widened and he fixed his gaze on the dragon. The man began to chant a spell, ordering hundreds of demonic hands to merge into one. He then loudly commanded one hand to split into three. 3 huge purple arms appeared behind his back, sticking out in different directions. One hand reached out to the dragon's left wing and grabbed it. The other hand grabbed the animal by the second wing. The side hand began to stretch the dragon's wings in different directions, injuring it, while the central hand continued to hold the dragon by the head. The dragon's eye, engulfed by the parachute, lit up and it roared loudly. Flashing a fierce look, Alex darted to the side. The central hand sharply pulled the dragon towards itself, pulling its head towards the ground. Alex read the spell loudly, ordering his hands to do a backflip. The side hand darted to the side, raising its fist to strike. Many large hands began to take turns attacking the dragon lying on the ground with their fists. Alex began to cast a spell, summoning a great demonic strike. He ordered a hail of blows to be dealt to the dragon. Local residents, crowded together, looked at what was happening with fascinated eyes. Sitting on the ground and resting his hands on his shield, Zeke watched as the giant hands took turns delivering powerful blows to him. He turned his head sharply to the side and his eyes widened in concern. He thought that now was not the time to be idle. He suddenly stood up from his seat and ran towards the freezing couple. He thought that he needed to save these people quickly. He ran up to the people and frantically grabbed the block that had formed around them. In a quiet, exhausted voice, the woman asked him for help. Zeke loudly and worriedly answered her that she need not worry, since he would free them right away. After a moment, the boy grimaced and pulled back. He shouted, noting that these ice floes were too cold. He exhaled noisily and glanced confidently at the people. The man was completely enveloped in an icy stream, leaving only a lifeless face on which frozen tears had accumulated. Zeke thought that the man had frozen to death. The guy mentally noted that he was trying to save the girl. Zeke's eyes widened when he heard a loud, drawn-out cry. In the hands of the girl, on whose face ice crusts had already begun to form, there was a baby who was crying loudly, choking with tears. The girl who was crying with him in a trembling voice asked to save at least the child. Zeke stuck the wooden side of his broom into the ice block. Furiously, he began to knock on it, trying to break the ice. He shouted loudly to the girl, asking her to wait a little longer since he would definitely handle it and be able to help. At the same time, he thought that he would most likely have to cut through his father's body to save them both. At the same time that Zeke was trying to help the frozen people, a fierce battle between Alex and the pond dragon continued not far from him. Zeke thought that Alex would be close soon, so he needed to hurry up. He thought that he needed to quickly get the people out and return to his position. Suddenly, a huge blue crystal grew on the dragon's back and began to glow with a bright white light, surprising Alex. The locals who saw this immediately became alarmed. The man, whose lower face was covered by a mask and blood was oozing from one eye, screamed loudly. Turning to the hero, he shouted at him to quickly move aside. He shouted that the same light destroyed their castle. The crystal on the dragon's back began to increase in size and glow more and more brightly. A bright flash flashed, the icy shock wave of which began to cover everything around with cold. Zeke, who continued to chop the block, froze when he saw what was rushing towards him. He covered himself with his enchanted shield, protecting himself from the snow attack. After some time, the shield broke into pieces and the guy, screaming loudly, flew to the side. The locals watched as the shock wave from the dragon reached them. Screaming loudly, they began to close their eyes and cover their faces with their hands as soon as the snow wave reached them. The fat man jumped in his seat when an icy draft reached him. He shouted, indignant that he was very cold. The dragon rose to its paws and screamed loudly, and huge ice growths grew on its back. Alex took a few steps, approaching the creature. He laughed and noted that it was all just like last time. His body completely took on a red hue, blurring the boundaries of body parts and making it one red spot with hieroglyphs glowing on it. He noted that it was becoming difficult for him to maintain the condition of this skin, which he saved for the war 20 years later. The man added irritably that it was tiring. Zeke lay on the cold ground, and his body was covered with snow. He was thinking about what just happened. After some time, the guy woke up and opened his eyes. He wondered why he didn't die. He mentally assumed that this was all thanks to the magic of Sir Deus and his enchanted shield. The boy's eyes widened in surprise when he heard a loud baby cry. He thought in surprise, is this really the child? Zeke raised himself a little on his elbows and tracked the place from which the child's crying was coming. The child, lying in the arms of his dead mother, whose frozen body had broken off below the waist, cried loudly, choking with tears. The guy happily thought that the child was still alive. He propped himself up on his elbows, clenching his teeth tightly and trying to stand up. He thought it was a great loss that he could not help his mother. He mentally asked the baby to continue a little longer since he was already coming. Fail his attempt to get up, the box falls, surprising him. He glances back to see if he's okay. Turning around, he sees that two of his legs below the knee and his left arm up to the elbow are completely missing, because they were frozen so hard by the ice wave that they simply broke off. He thought this couldn't be true. The huge stone on the dragon's back began to pulsate and emit white light again. Local residents who suffered the ice attack noticed this and began to move away with frightened eyes. The man with the bleeding eye shouted loudly that there would be another outbreak soon. He leaned forward and his eyes widened in concern and his eyebrows knitted towards the bridge of his nose. He shouted loudly, addressing the hero Zeke, saying that he urgently needed to escape from there. With his remaining hand, which was already red from the cold, Zeke trampled his way, clenching his teeth tightly. He also tried to somehow help himself with his hand, which was broken off below the elbow and was freezing. The guy thought that he had to save this child. He thought he had to do it because he was a hero. He slowly but surely continued to crawl through the frozen corpses towards the screaming child, not caring about the missing limbs, while the locals loudly shouted for the Sir Hero to come back and head towards them. Zeke thought that he was still a hero, even if he was a bad one. He thought that even though he couldn't save everyone the way other heroes do, he thought that he must definitely save the child. Alex stood in front of the glowing dragon crystal, stretching his demonic hands. He asked, did the parasite really not understand that this did not work for him? He said that's why people used them over and over again. He then called the creature a stupid lizard. An ice wave burst out from the dragon crystal again, which was much more powerful than all the previous ones. Zeke, covering the child with himself, closed his eyes and shouted loudly when the blow reached him. The boy's body was thrown high up, throwing him some distance, but he still held the baby tightly in his palms. When he landed on the ground again, his body was covered with snow, and a moment later a sound was heard. Zeke opened his eyes when a fur cape fell on top of his body. The guy rose a little and raised his surprised gaze upward, looking at Deus. Deus said that he really doesn't understand anything. The white-haired guy, his red eyes flashing, squatted down in front of Zeke, resting his head on his fist. He asked rhetorically, how do all these people hope to defeat him? Deus added that they were all too weak for that. Staring intently at the boy with his red eyes, he opened his mouth slightly, revealing sharp fangs. Deus thoughtfully said that they are all like a candle that he can easily blow out, and yet these people sacrifice themselves for each other. He noted that he couldn't understand how they lost to people for 66,500 years in a row. Zeke smiled wryly, looking up at the guy. He stammered and apologized for not being there on time. He said he could definitely do better next time. After these words, the boy passed out, burying his head in the snow, and Deus stood up. There was a quiet, drawn-out groan. Zeke, whose face was bandaged, slowly opened his eyes. After a moment, his eyelids dropped again. The guy washed quietly again. Zeke, whose bandaged hands were in place, suddenly jumped up on the bed with a shocked face, assuming a sitting position. He shouted loudly, asking where is the dragon. Calling Sir Deus, he asked what happened to the dragon. The guy looked around and saw that he was now on the bed of a penthouse in a hotel, the roof of which had recently been missing. He mentally asked if this was Sir Deus's room. Zeke began to scratch the top of his head with his hand. After a moment, he froze abruptly, trying to understand what was happening now. He thought, how did he end up here? The guy mentally suggested that he seemed to have passed out then. His eyes widened in surprise when something caught his attention. The guy's gaze simultaneously expressed shock and fear when he noticed that his arm, broken off during the snow attack, was in place, but was covered with large purple scars from stitches. With a sharp movement of his hand, Zeke tore off the blanket. He saw that his legs, with the same scars, were also in place. He wondered in surprise why his limbs were intact. He slowly examined the stitches, thinking that he remembered that he was simply in a terrible state. He tried to understand how this happened. A laughing voice was heard nearby, saying that everything looked quite good, and a second voice agreed with him. The boy, still in a state of shock, realized that the first voice belonged to Sir Deus. He quickly rose and peered out of the wreckage, looking down and loudly calling for Deus. A moment later, the boy froze in surprise again. Below on the ground he saw a huge pile of swords, shields and daggers, around which Deus and Alex stood and looked up at the guy. With a smile on his face, Deus asked Zeke if he slept well. The guy with a shocked expression on his face held out his hands in front of him. He stammered and asked what happened to his body. Correcting himself, he said that at first he was interested in the dragon, then stopped again and asked what happened to that baby. Deus thought about how many things this guy was interested in. The corners of his lips curled up and a smile stretched across his face. He looked up at Zeke with his calm gaze, and then opened his mouth. He said that both the dragon and the child were taken care of, so he needn't worry. Deus added that if the guy had enough rest, then let him come down here and help them with the cleaning, since it was time for them to open the store. Zeke, who had continued waving his arms all this time, froze and opened his mouth, gasping in surprise. He thought that as soon as he saw Deus's face, the guy's cheeks turned red and a sweet smile stretched across his face. Zeke thought that after that all the anxiety seemed to go away. He shouted loudly in response that he understood the master's decree, and so they continued to fulfill the requests of the golden dragon. With its wheels clattering loudly on the stones, the cart moved at great speed. Zeke, with a saucepan helmet on his head, frowned and clenched his teeth tightly. Sitting in the cart, he looked at the large dragon, which was destroying the city, dousing it in flames. Local residents ran in different directions, shouting loud pleas for help. Deus, calling the hero, pointed to the box with his index finger, and the guy turned to him in surprise. He leaned back in the cart, one arm behind his head and the other pointing at the dragon. He loudly told Zeke to attack. After these words, Zeke's eyebrows narrowed to the bridge of his nose, and his face took on a stern look. He shouted loudly to Sir Alex, saying he was ready. Alex, who jumped out of a portal in the sky, quickly descended towards the dirty dragon, from whose mouth a spell was coming out. Alex shouted back that he understood. Concentrating the power on his fist, he struck the dragon with a powerful blow. Every time they managed to slay the dragon, it somehow disappeared. Looking up at the broken wall of the penthouse, Zeke loudly called out to Deus. The guy walked out to the edge in his night pajamas, rubbing his sleepy eyes, and looked down in surprise. While he was picking his nose, a long sword flew right over his head. He looked up and saw various types of weapons and shields falling from the sky right towards the entrance to the hotel. The guy, who had not yet fully woken up, lowered his head down. He saw Alex and Zeke standing on the ground, standing in a pile of weapons, and Zeke, covering his head with a shield on which falling swords had accumulated, stood with a wide smile on his face. And the next morning a mountain of weapons appeared in front of their house. Deus, fighting the urge to fall asleep again, extended his hand forward, sticking his thumb up. And so the cart again rushed at great speed, making its way through the green thickets. A huge motley dragon, whose body was covered with yellow, green, red, and purple feathers, appeared in front of them and roared loudly. Zeke, without hiding his confident smile, frowned and loudly called Sir Alex. Alex soared into the sky in one leap. Then, with a sudden movement, the man began to fly down towards the dragon. The dragon was defeated with a powerful attack, but even that roar could not awaken Deus and the cart from sleep. So they continued. The cart was moving quickly again. Deus quickly defeated the night black dragon with a flashbang grenade, and they continued. The horses again pulled the cart at great speed. Zeke shouted loudly, grabbing the edge of the cart as the horses jumped off the cliff, heading down towards the sea dragon flying over the ocean. Every day more and more weapons rained down. The orange sun was slowly approaching the horizon. People sat and happily ate noodles prepared at Zeke's shop. Right in front of him at the counter sat Deus and Alex, who were eating just as appetizingly, slurping loudly as they did so. Looking at this, a satisfied smile stretched across Zeke's face. Suddenly, a piece of paper dropped into Deus' plate, catching his attention. The piece of paper indicated the place as the Shunrir Fortress and the signature of the Golden Dragon. Deus, who had noodles pushed from his plate to his mouth, sharply raised his hand upward, sticking out his index finger. He screamed that they needed to move out urgently. Deus lounged in the cart, throwing his hands behind his head as he so rapidly approached the bone dragon hovering above the city. In front of the guy, resting contentedly on soft capes with his eyes closed, stood Zeke, armed with a broom, whose eyes sparkled with anger. Deus opened his eyes and they flashed red. Zeke jumped out of the cart, heading towards the sea dragon, its mouth wide open and growling. He always did this when Deus told him it was time to attack. It was exactly the same with the Black Knight dragon, whose parasite settled in its mouth. Zeke covered himself with a shield, heading towards the fire-breathing dragon, which, growling loudly, was about to direct its flames at him. The boy swung his and with burning eyes quickly headed straight towards the dragon. At such moments, he shouted loudly, calling his attack the Dispeller of the Demon King. He struck the motley dragon, and the scent howled in pain, and their hotel was sprinkled with a pile of weapons. He then also dealt a crushing blow to the Blue Sea Dragon. In the morning, a pile of weapons again formed in front of their house. The guy also defeated a dragon with a parasite in its mouth. With a wide loss on his face, Zeke joyfully covered himself with a shield, protecting himself from the weapons falling from the sky. He took a few steps, leaving trails of blue blood behind him. Zeke, covered in blood, confidently walked in front, flashing his burning eyes and holding a broken broom in his hand, and behind him lay a defeated dragon. He heard a voice from the side and cast his surprised glance there. People looking out from the windows and balconies of their houses cheered, waving their arms. They shouted in praise of the dragon hunter, saying that he was sent by the gods. They shouted loudly, rejoicing that the dragon hunter who defended the Doria fortress had come to them. People said how cool he was and asked him to look at them. Appearing in front of the confidently walking Zeke, Deus called the boy, attracting his attention. Deus offered him his palm, and Zeke, with a smile on his face, loudly struck it as he passed by. Deus said that the Fig hero did a great job, and the guy thanked him loudly, laughing. Thus, the Zeke squad became the most famous team in these lands. Some time later, 3 young men stood in their village. Raising their gaze, they looked contentedly ahead. Deus asked if the work is really finished. Alex quietly answered him with consent. They looked at a 2-story shop, the road to which was decorated with lanterns and flags, and at the top of which there was a large sign. Alex said this is the first of the Devil's Gun stores. Thus the shop was finally opened. Various types of daggers hung on the red and white walls. There were also many shelves inside with many types of weapons stacked on them. Zeke stood joyfully with his arms outstretched, looking around the tall room, the surfaces of which were decorated with gold. He told Sir Deus that this was all simply incredible. While Zeke fluttered contentedly around the room, Alex raised everyone's index finger with a smile on his face after hearing Deus' words. Deus said that the man must have put a lot of effort into this. Alex agreed with this, saying that their store should not be equal even among stores in large cities. Deus, looking away with a malicious look to the side, said that from now on Alex and Zeke will be in charge of this store. Alex and Zeke froze, turning their surprised glances at the guy. Zeke asked, "What does this gentleman mean?" Deus serenely put his hands behind his head and sighed, while Alex and Zeke lined up around him with dissatisfied faces. Deus asked if they had ever seen shop owners working in them themselves. Alex asked irritably if Deus thought it would be too much trouble for him, and he agreed in a drawn-out manner. 2 demonic hands reached out to Alex and Zeke, clasping the young people by the shoulders. Deus pulled the guys with his arms and pressed them to him. He said he just wanted to be rich, not a store owner. He added that if they are not satisfied with this state of affairs, then they can always discuss their wishes regarding the management of this store. Alex and Zeke, whose faces were already red from the pressure, replied that they understood everything. Moving away from them, Deus, his eyes sparkling with satisfaction, raised his index finger up. He enthusiastically noted that since they had resolved this issue, it was time for the guys to work hard to make this store truly great. The young people, trying to recover from the strangulation, muttered quietly that they understood the boss's order. Deus turned with a smile on his face when the box called to him. Zeke stood in front of the guy and scratched the back of his head in confusion. He asked if he could sell noodles after finishing his shift at the store, since he still needed to earn money for his junior's education. Deus folded his hands under his chest and opened his mouth. He said that he didn't care, so Zeke could do what he wanted, and the guy happily thanked him. Looking behind the guy, Deus calls Alex. The man starts up and asks what is it. Standing half-turned, Deus looks at the man and opens his mouth. He tells Alex to bring what they were talking about. The orange-red sun sets behind the walls of the gun shop. Zeke smiles happily, standing with the 2 men and looking down. On the floor lies a large blue scaly sword decorated with gold and on the body of which there are red eyes. Zeke notes that the shield looks great. Deus bends down and takes it in his hands. He raises the shield up, telling Alex to read what he wrote. Alex says the shield is called Doom Ligura. He reveals that it is created from scales obtained as a reward during a dragon hunt, combined with blue and black stones as well as chaos scales. He says that this SS rank shield was forged by the best blacksmith of the underworld named Hermes. Alex says that this shield can withstand 3 or 4 attacks from the Demon King himself. Deus holds a shield in his hands, showing fake surprise, and Zeke enthusiastically spreads his arms to the sides. He happily says that the skill of the dwarves is truly incredible, since the fruits of their labors can withstand the attacks of even the Demon King. By underworld, Alex meant the world of demons, but Zeke took it literally. Deus abruptly handed the shield to the surprised boy. He said he wanted Zeke to try it on. The guy screamed slightly as purple magic began to sparkle in front of his eyes. Moments later, he found himself in the dark, hanging in weightlessness, and looked around in fear. He was trying to figure out where he was. Waving his head, he loudly tried to call Alex or Deus. His eyes widened in surprise and he slowly turned his head back when he heard the voice. The voice asked if he was the man who called him. Suddenly, the boy saw in front of him a huge red eye that was 20 times larger than himself. The eye said that his name was Fatal Moon, and from now on the boy would be its master until the flame of life of the eye died out. Zeke looked at the eye with a shocked look, his mouth wide open. He asked what does it mean to be a master. A moment later, a huge flash appeared in front of him, and Zeke shouted loudly, covering himself with his hands. He began to look around in surprise, returning to reality. Zeke asked where did Mr. Doom Lagoon go. The boy froze and turned his head towards Deus when he asked him to raise his shield. The guy waved his hand and fired a magical attack towards the box. The boy was able to catch the blow with his shield. However, the attack still pushed him back, and Zeke, breaking through the walls of the shop with his back, flew out into the street with a loud scream. Approaching the resulting hole, Alex began waving his hands, displeasedly saying that no normal owner would destroy his own store on opening day. Putting his hands in his pockets, Deus replied that this was just a small test. He noticed a boy lying in the rubble who raised his hand. Zeke climbed out from under the rubble and sat on top of them with a smile on his face, holding a shield in his hand. He happily said that the shield was really great. He added that it is so good that a rank and G rank heroes would love to get their hands on it. Deus and Alex looked at the whole boy with surprised eyes. Deus noted that even though it was only 1/100th of his full size, he was able to block the Spear of Doom with such ease. He glanced at Zeke, calling him a bullshit hero. Smiling joyfully, the boy asked what is it. The boy's face turned red and his eyes and mouth were filled with surprise when he heard Deus' words. Deus said that this shield is now his. He glanced at the boy and the corners of his lips turned up. He said that now he will have to supply Zeke with all sorts of equipment since he is so weak. He said that he would start with this for now, and then he would add one more thing at a time. Zeke asked if he was serious about all this. Alex and Deus froze in surprise and saw drops of tears begin to fall on the shield. Holding the shield tightly in his hands, Zeke lowered his red face, which had tracks running down it. He asked if Sir Deus was sure that he wanted to give him, an F-rank hero, such a cool shield. Seeing the boy's reaction, Deus froze. He answered briefly that everything was correct. The boy's footprints continued to flow onto the magic shield. He then grabbed him tightly in his arms and pulled him close to him. He continued to cry loudly, clutching the gift to himself. Zeke said that he could not even imagine that he would ever hold something like this in his hands. He said in a sweet voice that this is the best shield in the world. Deus shook his head and called the boy a fool. He said that he had no reason to cry since he didn't even hurt him with his last attack. Somewhere far away, in the large ruined hall, people were drinking and having fun, laughing loudly. Kingdom of Verd, Akoma Castle. The man extended his hand, decorated with many rings, forward. He noted that they are very heavy. He looked at the decorations with predatory eyes. The man noted that this time the catch was just right. A gray-haired man with a beard and expensive clothes continued to admire the jewelry, looking at them with eyes burning with greed. In a rough voice, he noted that the king did not need so much gold, since he did not take it to his grave anyway. He called the deceased king a shameless old man. He threw his arm over the shoulders of Princess April, whose face showed no emotion. The man cheerfully asked if she agreed with his words. He sat on the royal throne and laughed loudly, holding the girl sitting on his knees by the neck, while the rest of the people in the hall drank and had fun. Hitting a wooden mug with his foot and attracting attention, a man appeared in the hall. A man in a cape peeked around the corner, looking around. Then he walked a little further, examining the floor. Ignoring the surprised looks of people, the man moved towards the stairs. He began to walk around the hall, stopping at each place for a few seconds, humming thoughtfully. The man walked up the stairs. Everyone in the hall silently watched him wander back and forth, saying that there was nothing here either. He took a step onto the carpet in the center. People froze, looking at him with blank faces. The man began to walk forward along the red carpet, not paying attention to anyone. He squatted down and touched the floor with his ornate hand. The man thoughtfully noted that from the fortress gates to here there was not a single trace of the battle. The man leaning back on his throne shouted loudly, drawing attention to himself. He indignantly asked the man in the robe who he was. The man with chin-length emerald hair and a scar on his face smiled widely. He said that people can ignore him and do what they were doing before. The guy took a step forward, pushing off from the floor. He rose into the air and began to rapidly move forward, saying out loud that he needed to jump here. He landed right at the feet of the shocked man sitting with the princess on the throne. The guy with emerald hair said, "We should look here." He touched the broken floor with his hand. His green eyes opened wide, sensing the energy. He said that he had finally found it. The guy noted that everything happened from just one explosion. The guy stood up and straightened out, not paying attention to the surprised man. He noted that this is a very interesting turn. He stood in front of the throne, watching as the blow destroyed not only the walls of the palace, but also several mountains behind it. The guy noted that such damage was caused by just one blow. He began to wonder if one person. His dissatisfied eyes lit up with a green flame. He asked if one person could do this. The gray-haired man, looking at the guy with dumbfounded eyes, tried to say something. With his mouth wide open and spluttering, he shouted at the guy to get out of here immediately. The rest of the guests, grabbing their weapons, loudly agreed with these words. The guy turned around sharply, anxiously putting his hand forward. He shouted that no one should move because it was dangerous. He said that even though they are pathetic cockroaches who have taken over this place, their lives are still worth something. After these words, the men in armor rushed from their seats. They shouted loudly that this guy should die for such words. The guy with emerald hair exhaled displeasantly and began to quickly move the fingers of his hand. He suggested that they should not quarrel since they are all God's creatures. Suddenly, long luminous threads appeared throughout the hall, and people, having caught their feet or hands on them, began to lose their limbs. The guy stood with his arm extended forward, looking at the crowd of people lying around and screaming in pain. He said that those who do not want to end up the same way should not move. The man sitting on the throne jumped up from his seat, indignantly asking who he was. The guy turned and stuck his index finger in front of him. The guy with dark brown hair smiled widely, pointing upward with his finger. He said that some glitches from above became interested in the events that happened here, as if something very bad had happened. He added that he was sent to investigate this matter, so he hopes for understanding and cooperation. Looking at the white-haired man's index finger pointing upward, does the guy mean heaven? The guy with emerald hair closed his eyes and smiled contentedly and agreed. Remembering the huge bright palace in his head, he joyfully said that representatives of the Lord were interested in this matter. He added that these are saints. The old man's eyes widened in shock, and with his mouth slightly open, he began to spit drool. He asked in fear, was this guy really sent here by the saints? The young man leaned forward and turned his burning eyes, looking at the frightened man with a predatory smile on his face. He said that he saw that the man himself had already understood everything, so there was no point in explaining, but it was better to go straight to the story. He said the man should tell him what happened that day. He leaned lower and lower, and the man more and more settled his back to the throne. The guy said that he should tell him who it was, what he did, and what was the reason for it. The guy narrowed his eyes and grinned. He said that what was happening did not fit into his head at all. He noted that in his memory this was the best disappearance without a single trace after the destruction of the fortress in the blink of an eye. The man rolled around with displeasure and said that he didn't know much about what was happening. He said that he only heard that the merchants in the city called the man white-haired. The guy froze in surprise, realizing something at that moment, and asked the man again. The old man furrowed his eyebrows and a drop of sweat ran down his forehead. He added that the merchants said that some unknown white-haired man came into the fortress in the morning. He said that after a short period of time people heard loud screams. The man added that after this the fortress suddenly exploded. The face of the man with emerald hair frowned with displeasure. The gray-haired man raised his confused gaze to him again. He said loudly that he didn't know anything else. He said that all the people in the fortress died, so only one God tells what really happened there. The guy remained silent, but the corners of his lips crawled up. He turned his back to the man sitting on the throne and walked down the stairs. The young man thanked the man for his answers and said goodbye to him. The guy with emerald hair stopped and froze in place when he heard a loud scream in his wake. The man on the throne shouted, saying that the man had become their savior. He shouted that such a guy would not understand this, since the tyranny of King Verds was simply unbearable. All the people in the hall froze, listening to the man's words. He continued to shout, saying that his palace was not the greatest castle, since it was built on the bones and blood of the people who lived here. He indignantly noted that God had sent them a white-haired savior to overthrow the evil king and return the fortress to the people. The guy stood silently and listened to the loud indignation of the man sitting on the throne. The old man shouted that that man was the real Messiah, and he was much more inclined towards people than the saints who, pretending to be gods, live in luxury. A young man with emerald hair turned his head towards the man and flashed a dissatisfied look. He noted irritably that it was a pretty good speech. He added that it would be the saints who would determine the origin of that person, be it evil or divine. The guy waved his ringed hand and began to move his fingers, surprising the old man. The guy began to say that also. The guy turned away and snapped his fingers, and the man's head, along with the top of the throne, flew to the side. He said that such people who say such things about saints do not deserve to live. Deus kicked the eye of the creature parasitizing the dragon with his foot. He was indignant that even this dragon had this stupid bacteria. Alex corrected him, saying that it was not a bacterium, but a parasite. The two of them stood near the head of the defeated dragon lying on the ground. Deus said that to him they are all the same, and in any case, he needs to call the golden dragon to take care of the rest. Alex quietly agreed with his words. Two men walked along the green grass. Throwing his hands behind his head, Deus said that at first he was glad that they had a lot of work. He asked if this would be a serious problem for the dragons. He asked if the golden dragon, as the goddess of dragons, should have taken care of all this herself. Alex directed his calm gaze towards the guy. He replied that perhaps it was all about her human body, which she used to be in this world. Deus asked if this really matters. Looking at the guy, Alex said that he was not sure, but it seemed that information about this was in the interdimensional library. Deus continued to walk with his hands behind his head and threw a surprised look at the man. He asked why this information was in the library. Alex replied that the interdimensional library is one of the most important aspects of the Divine Court because it stores evidence for everything. He said that while memories and facts can be easily distorted through hallucinations caused by magic, he added that the history stored in the library is the only and indisputable evidence of anything, because the facts reflected in it cannot be distorted. Continuing to walk, Deus turned away and yawned. He asked if it turns out that the golden dragon does not want to take part in all these events out of fear of leaving a trace of himself in the interdimensional library. He noted questioningly that in other worlds her presence here is a secret that she does not want to divulge. Alex calmly replied that it seemed to him that this was actually the case. They both approached the cart, which they had previously left at the edge of the forest. Deus asked why she was hiding her presence here. Alex replied that he had no idea, since such a humble person like him could not understand the thoughts and reasons of the dragon deity. The guy grinned, saying that this looked like adult things that children were not usually privy to. Deus let out a quiet chuckle as he and Alex approached the cart and saw Zeke sitting on the ground with his head hanging and his back leaning against the cart. Deus asked if the guy had really fallen asleep. He glanced at Alex in surprise when he heard his words. The man noted that the boy must be exhausted. They watched as Zeke, stained with blue blood, snored peacefully with a smile on his face. Alex noted that it may not be obvious from him, but he still stood up to a dragon that would be difficult for even a G-rank hero to deal with. He added that perhaps only Zeke is capable of this because he is used to holding on and overcome difficulties. Noticing something, Deus's face twisted in surprise and he chuckled loudly. He saw a demonic shield, wrapped in cloth, standing on the ground next to the boy. He chuckled and asked why he carried his shield this way. Two young men stood opposite the sleeping boy and looked down at him. Alex laughed and said that Zeke said that he should take care of this shield, and for him it is very important. He added that Zeke said that he plans to pass it on to his younger brother when he grows up to become a hero. Deus stretched and laughed loudly, telling Alex to tell this fool to use a shield and not worry about keeping the shield, since he can make another one for the younger one. Alex grinned and said that he would convey these words to him. Deus turned around and walked to the side with his hands behind his head. He said loudly that it was time to move out, so Alex should throw the boy into the cart, but only so as not to wake him up. The man quietly replied that he understood everything. Two men sat on the carts as coachmen, moving slowly across the clearing under the night sky. Alex cast a surprised glance at the man upon hearing his question. Deus asked how things are going with Zeke, is anything falling off? The guy turned his head, looking at the boy sleeping soundly in the cart. He said he was referring to his attached limbs. Alex replied that everything seemed to be fine. Zeke lay in the company of his broken broom and pan, hugging him tightly and pressing his shield to himself. Deus said that he thought the doctors of the underworld would do so, but it seems to have turned out quite well. Alex replied that if you need to sew on a limb, you need to know how it is cut off correctly, and he is more than sure that they had enough practice on human bodies. The wind blew Deus' hair, and the guy smiled contentedly. He said that anyway, doesn't Alex think Zeke would make a great hero if he were D-class? He added that he has a strong sense of responsibility, so he thinks the boy did well. Deus gave the man a surprised look when he heard his loud laugh. Alex asked the guy not to jinx the boy with such talk. Laughing loudly, the man looked at Deus and said that in 20 years he and Zeke could become enemies. Deus asked why they would become enemies. The man jumped on the spot and indignantly attacked the guy. He angrily shouted that it was because he was destined to be the Demon King. Deus smiled happily and pointed his index finger at his cheek. He said in a good-natured voice that such a thing could not happen, since he was just a noble companion of the hero and not some kind of Demon King. Alex was loudly indignant, saying that this was all nonsense. While Zeke continued to snore loudly, Deus looked at the man with a smile on his face. He joyfully asked if the boy, in his opinion, coped with the role of the last hero. Deus froze and his eyes widened in surprise when he heard Alex's answer. He replied that this was impossible since the boy was not from the Zero generation. Deus asked what the man means by Generation Zero and what is it. Alex's red eyes narrowed and he said that according to the rules of this world, the last hero was born in the 5th generation. He began to say that people usually give birth to children at the age of 20. He said that their children, in turn, after 20 years give birth to their own children, and they give birth to theirs, and so on. He said that thus, when the 5th generation reaches its 20th birthday, exactly 100 years have passed. Alex said that this is the same year when the Demon King's invasion occurs. Alex said that the generation of heroes that will go against the demons this year will be the beginning of a new cycle, that is, the Zero generation. Alex looked ahead at the road with a calm expression. He noted that in the Zero generation only one last hero is born. He said that in this way the box, as a native of the 4th generation, would not be able to become the last hero, but only his descendants. Alex cast a surprised glance at Deus, hearing his loud laugh. Deus looked at him and smiled contentedly. He quietly repeated that every 100 years, when the Demon King invades, the last hero is born. He asked rhetorically, out of nowhere, is this the rule of this world? He quietly noted that this whole game looked like some kind of bad joke. Deus's lips stretched into a grin and he laughed quietly, catching Alex's thoughtful gaze. The man's red eyes narrowed in displeasure. He asked in a low voice, maybe the gentleman would finally let him in on his plans. He asked why Deus abdicated the throne of the Demon King. The white-haired guy threw his hand over his knee and turned to the side with a distant face. He asked in surprise, hadn't he told him about this before? Alex looked at Deus with a malicious, disordered look and loudly replied that he had not heard anything about this. Deus rubbed his chin with his finger, looked up at the sky and began to think out loud about why he didn't tell him anything. Alex protested loudly, saying that he had no idea. Deus quietly replied that there was nothing special about his decision. He cast his thoughtful glance to the side and opened his mouth slightly. He began to say that the whole reason was that he abdicated the throne because. Moments later, a loud explosion was heard in the sky and, raising his head, Deus saw a blown-up airship that was falling to the ground, leaving a trail of fire behind it. Looking at the falling flying object, Deus asked if it was an airship by any chance. He said it looked like it must be someone important. They saw a red fire-breathing dragon hovering around the airship, spraying flames from its mouth. Alex noted that there was a dragon again. Deus was indignant, saying that there are really so many of these dragons in this world that they are encountered at every step. Alex spoke quietly, asking how is this possible. His eyes widened in shock as he peered at the flying ship, fearfully asking if this was what he was thinking about, drawing a surprised look from Deus. The man saw a slowly burning white flag with a huge coat of arms. Alex shouted loudly that this was holy spruce. He said that meant there were purebloods there. Deus looked up and his eyes lit up with delight. He joyfully asked if these were really purebreds. Alex answered him with a short agreement. The man looked at the sky with a worried look. He noted that this is the family that has produced more than 100 recent heroes, and their blood is the purest, even among other similar families. He said irritably that he does not understand why two sides that have fought side by side for centuries are now fighting each other against a friend, and what is happening in modern times is completely beyond comprehension. Deus called Alex loudly, tearing him out of his own thoughts and attracting the man's attention. When the flying ship flashed by with a bright flash and disappeared behind the mountain, Deus turned to the man and smiled joyfully. He enthusiastically said that they urgently needed to go there and watch the show. A crowd of people who had escaped from the burning ship were descending the mountainside, dragging on a large cart a huge load wrapped in white cloth and tied with rope. The man shouted loudly to the knights to hurry up, but make sure nothing gets burned. The knights screamed loudly, indignantly, why is this thing so heavy? The knights pulled long ropes, dragging the cart over huge stones. Several men screamed loudly as the cable in their hands suddenly snapped and the cart wheel came off the rock. A short man stood on a stone ledge, holding a sword in his hand, and looked at the knight who had fallen to the ground next to the broken wheel. The man shouted indignantly, saying that he had just asked to be careful with the load. Whimpering in pain, the knight loudly apologized. A short, plump man with a monocle clenched his jaw angrily. He was displeased and indignant that there were only mediocrities around him. The man watched as the knights, loudly encouraging each other, quickly pulled the cart. Looking at their pitiful attempts, he wondered if they even had any idea how much this thing cost. He thought that if there was even the slightest scratch on it, then all their heads would fly off one after another. The man narrowed his eyes and turned to the side when he heard a loud roar. Raising his head, he watched as the dragon was rapidly approaching them. In a frightened voice, he muttered that they were all in trouble. The dragon opened its mouth wide, preparing to launch a fiery attack, and roared loudly. The man shouted loudly, telling the others that the dragon was coming. The man's face twisted with displeasure, and he put his hand forward, pointing at his subordinates. He shouted loudly, saying that the dragon was aiming for the cargo. He ordered all the magicians and archers to prepare to attack. The armored men raised their bows, drawing their arrows to the string. People in long white robes put their hands forward, opening scrolls with glowing hieroglyphs, and began to read spells. The man with the glowing eyes waved his palm and bent his little finger, thumb, and ring fingers, casting a spell. Growling loudly, the dragon began to concentrate the flames in its mouth, preparing to strike. Spitting drool, the man loudly shouted to his subordinates to attack. The archers began to straighten their fingers, firing arrows at the dragon. Magical energy began to flow out of the magic scrolls, glowing with a blue light. Magic began to emerge from the saint's hand, folded in a magical gesture. All three types of attacks rushed towards the dragon, who simultaneously spat out a stream of flames from its mouth, roaring loudly. A column of fire hit a crowd of people, and those, thrown back by the explosion, flew up, screaming loudly. The fat man fell to the ground, crying out in pain. Raising himself on his elbows, he raised his gaze upward, looking at the dragon flying in the sky, spitting flame. Looking at the dragon, the man swore loudly. He stood up, walking towards the slope, and looked at the load. The man screamed loudly, asking the others if their goods were intact. Light hieroglyphs flashed around the huge bundle, playing the role of a magical barrier, and knights were spinning around it, trying to recover from the attack. They loudly answered that everything was fine with the cargo, and at the same time, screams of pain were heard. The man cried out that he was glad that the goods had survived. He clenched his teeth tightly and raised his head up again with an angry face. Having flown some distance, the dragon turned sharply, flying back, gathering fire in its mouth, preparing for a new attack. The man shouted loudly, saying that the dragon was coming back again. His face, dripping with sweat, frowned with displeasure, and he opened his mouth wide. He shouted, saying that this dragon is still young, so they should finally deal with it already. He ordered the attackers to take aim again. The subordinates answered loudly that they understood, and the knights again pulled the string on their bows, and the magicians put their scrolls forward. With a loud roar, the dragon, approaching, opened its fiery mouth wide. With a fierce expression on his face, the man shouted that this attack should be the last for the dragon. Loud footsteps sounded behind him, and a voice made the man turn around in surprise. The man told him to step aside. The man jumped and pushed his foot against the round hat on the man's head, lifting him up, causing him to cry out in displeasure. The man looked up in surprise, adjusting his hat. He said in surprise, "Is it really, sir?" A guy with blonde hair, blue eyes flashing, waved his hand. Activating his magic, he quietly said the word "cut." When he was above the dragon, the young man swung his sword, from which a stream of green energy erupted, causing a powerful cut to the dragon. He cast his spell of cutting the camellia branches. Seeing this, the fat man's eyes and mouth opened wide. He shouted enthusiastically that he was incredibly happy about the appearance of Sir Various. The guy landed on the ground, watching the dragon he had defeated fall lifelessly. A blonde guy wearing blue clothes and a cross mark on the left side of his face stuck his sword into the ground and folded his hands on it. He indifferently noted that with his behavior the dragon was begging for death. He added that only escape after the first attack would have helped to avoid death, but this stupid creature decided otherwise. Various waved his hand and threw the sword into the hands of the fat man. Having caught it, the man smiled joyfully and said that Sir Various should not have bothered so much, but the fact that he was able to cut a dragon in half, even a young one, with just one blow, is worthy of great admiration. The blonde replied indifferently that a dragon is a dragon, regardless of whether he is young or not, and then ordered the man to take care of his sword. He happily replied that he understood everything and would try hard. The man opened his mouth in surprise, holding a bloody sword in his hand, and looked at the guy who pointed him in the direction with his hand. Various ordered the man to restore order here and send someone for help. The blonde turned to the man and looked at him with his angry burning eyes. Lowering his voice, he began to say that if suddenly someone finds out what they are carrying. The guy said in a stern voice that his father would blow his head off his shoulders in the blink of an eye. Various turned away and walked forward, the man behind him suddenly lighting up. He said in a nervously laughing voice that he understood everything, and Sir Various could go and rest in peace. The blonde stopped abruptly when he heard a rude voice behind him. The voice asked if this was the cargo he meant. Alex and Deus stood on top of a huge bundle lying in the cart, surprising people with their appearance. The fat man, holding the sword in his hands, looked up at them. He shouted, indignantly asking who they were. Deus swung his leg, cutting the ropes and tearing the white fabric. Under the white cloth he saw part of the muzzle of a red dragon, which began to growl loudly at the sight of the guy. Deus said that earlier they were talking about something, but in fact it turned out to be another dragon. The guy's eyes widened in surprise. The roaring dragon looked at him with ordinary eyes with vertical pupils. Deus said that this dragon looks normal, which means it is completely normal and not infected with any parasites. Looking at the ringing with surprised eyes, he noted that he understood why the dragon was pursuing these people, because the whole point was that he wanted to save his mother. Alex quietly replied that he believed that this was actually the case. Deus raised his glowing red eyes to the people and smiled. Grinning, he asked if they had not established a truce with the dragons. He noted that the blonde is part of the heroic family, but this already smacks of some kind of conspiracy. Various flashed his blue eyes with a dissatisfied expression on his face. Ignoring Deus' question, he noted that it looked like he would have to take care of a couple more corpses. Alex leaned towards the ear of Deus, who was pleased with himself and covered his mouth with his hand. He asked why he was provoking this man. Smiling widely, Deus asked, "Isn't the man interested in what abilities purebloods have?" Turning around, Various began to walk away, surprising the two young men. The blonde ordered the fat man to quickly deal with these two. He perked up in response and loudly replied that he would do everything. Holding the Various sword tightly in his hands, he turned around and opened his mouth wide with an angry expression. He was loudly indignant, saying that although he didn't know who they were, they saw something they shouldn't have. He ordered his knights to capture them. The knights, responding with loud agreement, holding swords and shields in their hands, began to approach the cargo. Deus was surprised to see the pureblood begin to walk away. He asked if he really just leaves. Deus's face turned red and he pouted with great disappointment. He said upsetly that he thought that since this man was of pure blood, some kind of fun would happen, but in reality it was boring. He offendedly ordered Alex to kill everyone here. The guy turned around and threw a surprised and offended look at Alex when he heard the objection. Alex stood and looked at him with his worried gaze. He said that they should only play the role of the hero's companions. In response to this, Deus asked what, in this case, the man proposes to do with all this. Looking at the guy, Alex asked, "Doesn't fighting the pureblood family go against Deus' original plan?" Looking back at him, the guy replied that now that Alex started talking about it, he was starting to doubt it. He said that in essence, that blonde guy is just as blessed as Zeke. Two young men stood and looked down at the knights trying to approach them. Looking at Deus, Alex noted that this was a good point, and then added that the families of the heroes always have the prefix saint in front of the name of the tree in their names to show that they are blessed. In response to this, Deus asked why they all use tree names. They continued to talk to each other, ignoring the loud curses of the fat man who stood at the very bottom. Alex said that people take the name of those trees that grow on their territory. In response to this, Deus jokingly replied that he would not be surprised if they also had a general tree planting day. The fat man shouted indignantly to his knights, saying that they should immediately capture and kill these people since they still had the impudence mock them. After these words, the magicians put their scrolls forward and began to read spells. The archers grabbed their guns and began to draw back the string. When they launched a simultaneous attack, the two young men standing on the dragon's body suddenly disappeared. They suddenly appeared behind the backs of magicians and knights, causing them shock. Looking at his comrade, Deus said that since they had already been attacked, they needed to sort it all out as quickly as possible, otherwise these people would also wake up Zeke. The magicians and knights perked up and began to scatter to the sides, and the fat man exclaimed in surprise when he saw two young men. He screamed indignantly, asking how they got there. Looking at the guy, Alex noted with concern that it would not be difficult to kill them all, and then asked if this was a necessity. In response to this, Deus was loudly indignant, saying that the man was asking too many unnecessary questions. Alex asked if he had already said before that they were just bringing down the hero. After these words, Deus's face flushed with displeasure. He said irritably that in this case, let the man run and fall on his knees in front of them, asking people for mercy so that they can leave calmly. Alex pointed his hand at the dragon and then said that it was too late to do so since they had seen their big secret. After these words, the guy got angry and loudly indignant, asking what, in this case, he wants to hear from him. Alex asked if they could just run away, after which Deus asked if he was scared. The man grinned and said that he was not afraid of anything. In response to this, Deus laughed loudly and called him a coward. The fat man had already begun to boil over from what was happening, and steam was literally emanating from his red, displeased face. He muttered, noting that these two had started some kind of farce here. He screamed loudly, ordering his subordinates to kill them now. After these words, the magicians and knights responded with loud agreement and rushed out of their places, rushing to attack. One of the magicians waved his hand, preparing to attack Alex, and he glanced at him. He irritably noted that until the very end he did not want to get involved with the hero's family. He added that in this situation nothing can be done about it. Flashing his gourmet eyes, the man puffed out his cheek. With a loud, unpleasant sound, a stream of magic burst out of his mouth, aimed at the magician and burning his face alive, causing him to scream. The horses, tied to the cart, were peacefully browsing the grass while behind them there was a violent clash over the mountains. With a smile on his face, Zeke snored loudly while holding his shield in his arms. With a loud cry, the knights, waving their weapons, ran towards Alex and Deus. The magician pushed off the ground with his foot. Jumping into the air, he raised his palm, in which magic began to accumulate, and loudly shouted the flaming hand spell. Alex cast his stern look at the man. The man spat out a blast of energy at the man again, causing him to scream loudly. The two young men turned around to see a knight who, with a loud cry, swung his weapon at them. Flashing his red eyes, Alex darted to the side. He rarely rushed past the knight, taking his head off his shoulders and cutting his axe in half. The other knights, seeing this, froze in fear. Alex rushed through the crowd with lightning speed, cutting their bodies with his demonic hand. Severed limbs scattered in different directions. The man aimed his arrow, aiming for Alex's back. When he released the arrow, it, glowing with yellow light, rushed towards the demon with lightning speed. Along with the shot, the archer shouted the mighty shot spell. Alex extended his blood-stained hand in front of him and folded his fingers to make a click. A moment later, the wounded knight fell to the ground with a loud cry. Immediately after this, another wizard appeared next to Alex and began to wave his hands. The man released the energy from his hands using the lightning bolt spell. Summoning the portal, Alex formed a square with his index fingers and thumbs, and a purple circle began to appear between them. The man created two portals, one of which received the magician's attack, and the other directed it at the magician himself. A moment later he was struck by an electric shock, causing a loud scream. Alex silently watched as the magician, falling, beats in death convulsions. He extended his blood-stained hand to his mouth and licked off the red drops. The man's eyes sparkled and he chuckled quietly, and Deus, who was standing behind him at that time, yawned lazily. Looking at what was happening with burning eyes, Alex bloodthirstily noted that killing people was still incredibly pleasant. The fat man, not noticing the Varias landing behind him, watched the fight with frightened eyes. Stuttering, he asked loudly, "Who are these people?" The blonde pushed his foot against the man's head again, and he screamed in pain. Varias appeared directly above Alec and Deus, swinging his sword, beginning to cast the concussion spell. He lunged forward sharply, and his sword released many magical cuts onto the ground. The blonde cast his spell, shaking camellia branches. From the impact, the ground began to split, and huge boulders began to fly away to the sides. Varias landed feet first on the ground. He began to inspect the area, which was filled with a huge cloud of dust. A voice suddenly came from behind him. Varias turned around, not hiding his irritated look. Deus loudly noted that the guy had made a huge mess here. Turning, he saw two young men standing unharmed on a high ledge. The blonde frowned and glanced at them from under his brows. He angrily asked who they were, noting how easily they killed soldiers and dodged his sword. Varias asked if they were members of other families. Deus cast a serene glance at the guy. He noted that the blonde was wrong. Deus said that he needed to think more broadly, since not everyone who has even an ounce of power within them is part of a family. Varias narrowed his eyes, glowing blue. He asked in a low voice if they were then dragons. He moved the new one, pressing it firmly into the ground. The guy said that now it doesn't matter at all. He took a stance, tightening his grip on his sword, which began to glow green. Varias said that he should just kill them anyway. The corners of Deus's lips turned up and he chuckled quietly. He asked if the guy really thought he could get rid of him. Deus's eyes glowed red and a predatory smile stretched across his face. In a stern voice, he said that it would be impossible to get rid of him. The very moment Varias saw the smile on Deus's face, his eyes involuntarily widened. His consciousness fell into emptiness and his body lit up with a yellow light. The blood in his veins began to boil and glow along with him. Something deep inside Varias suddenly awakened. Screaming, the guy began to come into the creation, and light began to emerge from his back. He jerked and screamed loudly as magical energy began to burst out. Seeing this, Alex froze and his eyes widened in surprise. He wondered if this had already happened. Varias screamed loudly, and the ground around him began to shake, throwing up huge boulders. The fat man standing with the knights covered his frightened face from the dust. He worriedly asked Sir Varias what happened to him. Varias clenched his teeth tightly and growled. He began to walk forward, and his face expressed only pure anger, and a bright light in the form of a cross formed behind him. A ridiculous smile appeared on Deus's face, and his eyes widened in surprise. He asked Varias what kind of show he put on here. The blonde pushed off the ground with his feet. A moment later, showing an animal grin, he found himself directly opposite Deus, which stunned Alex. Looking at Deus with a burning, thoughtful gaze, Various growled loudly. Deus's gaze at this moment, on the contrary, expressed calm. He sighed loudly and said that he thought the blonde had changed a little. Lunging forward, Various clenched his teeth tightly and swung his arm. He attacked Alex and Deus with many powerful cuts, but they bounced away without any problems. Deus stepped onto the mountain ledge, looking at the cloud of dust and smoke that had formed far below. He stood on one leg, his hands in his pockets, and a smile spread across his face. Grinning, he said that the guy still lacked speed. He added that the blonde needed to move faster, otherwise all the spectators would fall asleep. Deus turned around in surprise when he heard Alex's voice calling him. The man smiled and said that they had to go, which caused Deus even more surprise. The guy perked up and grimaced his face with displeasure. He said irritably that events had just begun to unfold in an interesting direction, and Alex again wanted to ruin everything. He asked if the man was really afraid of the hero. Alex answered him with a short agreement. With a smile on his face, he pulled his right arm out from under his cloak, which was completely missing above the elbow, and the wound sparkled with a yellow light. The man said that he was actually a little scared. Deus glanced at the wound and frowned. He asked what it all meant and then noted that it looked simply disgusting. Various, who had risen into the air with an angry expression on his face, began to rapidly approach Alex and Deus, holding his sword tightly in his hand. A moment later, his face was directly opposite the displeased face of Deus. The blonde began to voice his spell, starting with the word cut down. At this moment, a red light flashed through Deus's eyes. In a dissatisfied voice, he told Alex that the demon could not deceive his eyes. He said that he knew that Alex could easily kill this nasty guy. Deus asked why, then he hesitated. After Varia's voice the spell chopping down the camellia tree, a huge explosion was heard. Varia's hit Deus with his sword, but he, touching his head, froze in place, causing the blonde to react in shock. Deus said that he had already warned him about this before. Deus, whose cheek was propped up by a large blade, smiled widely and opened his eyes burning with madness. He said it was impossible to kill him. He narrowed his eyes and smiled slyly. Deus said that even a strand of his hair cannot be cut off from a purebred. Varias made a sharp lunge back, and then waved his hand, in the palm of which a bright light began to sparkle, turning into a sword. Deus skillfully maneuvered the blonde's cutting magical attacks. In an involuntary voice, he asked if the guy was of noble blood. The guy touched the ground with his foot. He jumped back sharply while Varias, chasing him, lunged forward, swinging his weapon. Dividing each word into syllables, Deus in a calm voice asked the blonde to show him the power of pure blood. Trying to kill the demon, Varias thoughtlessly began to strike the scales of blows wherever his eyes looked. Deus pulled back and yawned loudly as one of the magical blows passed close to his face. The guy, with his hands in his pockets, jumped back with light movements, while Varias, with a frantic look, continued to rush at him, laying his head down. Deus loudly noted that he was bored. In a disappointed voice, he said that he had high hopes for the blonde, since he was the heir to the blood of the last hero, but in reality he turned out to be no faster than a fly. Deus looked at him with an emotionless gaze. He noted that he was too lazy to even kill Varias. He added that those whom he was able to defeat in his life were simply destroyed. Deus landed, pressing his foot into the ground and creating a crack in it. He said that it simply could not be otherwise. Deus crouched down a little, preparing to make a sharp lunge. A predatory grin appeared on the guy's face, and his eyes flashed furiously. In a loud, menacing voice, he began to pronounce his spell Guillotine of Doom. Suddenly, Alex appeared opposite him. The man put his hand under the blow, closing the Varias, and the limb flew to the side, causing shock in the eyes of Deus. At that moment, the sword in Varias' hands began to glow with a bright light. Swinging it, he pierced the weapon right through the back of Alex, who was covering him, and cast the spell cutting down camellia branches. Looking at Alex with stunned eyes, Deus loudly screamed his name. The man turned his gaze to the side, and several drops of his own blood flew off his face. He turned his face towards Varias and spat a stream of dark liquid from his mouth, causing the guy with a shocked face to lose his balance and begin to fall down. The scales fell from his eyes, and his gaze regained its healthy appearance. A moment later, Varias fell face first into the ground right at the feet of Alex and Deus. Deus cast a displeased glance at the blonde when she heard his loud snoring. He asked Alex if he decided to knock him out in order not to kill him. When the demon ignored the question, Deus called out to him loudly, and he turned his side glance at him. He asked what was happening to him now. Alex stood half-turned and looked at the guy. Deus noted that the man kept trying to avoid a fight with the pureblood, saying that he was scared. He added that after a couple of moments Alex voluntarily threw himself on the sword. Deus raised his eyebrows and his eyes were wide open in surprise. He ordered Alex to explain his behavior. Deus added that the man must tell everything in order. The guy perked up and froze when he heard the man's answer. Alex said that he was asking for forgiveness, and then added that he was not interested in that young man at all. He raised his stern gaze and opened his mouth. The man said that he was interested in order in the world. Deus's face twisted in response to this. He asked, what does this mean by order? He asked if it was not his duty to do the exact opposite. Alex tilted his head slightly, casting a stern glance at the guy from under his brows. He said that he does everything exclusively within the established procedure. He approached the cliff, looking down at the corpses of people, the burning earth, and the captured dragon on the cart. Alex said that if a friend's news that the Demon King is walking on the surface spreads publicly, then the whole world will turn upside down. He said that after this, people would begin to advance in an endless stream, and even a child who had just climbed out of the cradle would crawl to Deus on the threshold with a blade at the ready. He said that this is human nature. The guy raised his eyebrows and opened his mouth wide, saying that he could calmly come because he would burn them all at once. Deus exclaimed, saying that he had been thinking about this for a long time, but still could not get rid of one thought. He turned his irritated gaze to Varias, who was lying on the ground, burying his face in it. He was indignant, saying that he did not understand how such non-entities could defeat someone like himself. Deus cast a surprised glance at Alex when he saw how the man stood stretched out in a smile. Deus froze as realization dawned on him. His brow furrowed and his eyes widened. In a low voice he asked if there was something else. He added that it was something he didn't know about. Alex, continuing to smile, stood silently. With his hands in his jacket pockets, Deus straightened his back. He asked if he would know this only after 20 years. Continuing to smile, Alex answered him with a short agreement. Deus glanced at the man with his frown. He said that he understood that he was not going to tell him anything. He added that Alex argues that this, you see, will disrupt the world order. The man also stood with a smile on his face and then opened his mouth. He said Deus was completely right. He added that now is the time to go back. Alex threw a surprised look at the guy when claws grew on his hand and his skin turned purple. Deus asked what would happen if. He extended his clawed hand forward, and purple flames lit up in his open palm, and dark spots spread across his face. In a predatory voice, he asked what would happen if he killed everyone present here. He flashed his glowing red eyes. Lowering his voice, he said that the order for which Alex was shaking so much would be disrupted, and he was literally provoking him to do it. Grinning, he asked if after this a god from heaven would come down here or something like that. The flame in his hand went out, and the expression on his face changed to surprise when the guy heard the words of Deus. He replied that he himself did not really know what would happen. However, he was completely sure of one thing. Alex's lips stretched into a mocking smile. He happily said that he was confident that if Deus did what he just said, then his dream of becoming a hero's companion would be completely destroyed, since all the heroes of this world would unite against him, and Deus would have no choice but to destroy this world to its very foundation. He said that his renunciation should be forgotten, because in this way he could become the greatest demon king in history. Alex's face twisted into an evil smile and he darted to the side, causing Deus to react with shock. The man asked how he didn't think of attacking people before the last hero appeared. He noted that Deus had a great idea. The man walked up to the unconscious Varias and swung his leg at him, saying that the master can go and rest while he takes care of this purebred. Deus threw his hands forward and ran towards the man, screaming loudly, telling him not to do this. He fell on top of Alex and began to pull him back, holding the man by the shoulders. He smiled good-naturedly and said that Alex seems to be the type of person who doesn't understand jokes. In a sweet voice, the guy added that he had no plans to start a war yet, so they don't need to get their hands dirty now. Alex feigned indignation in response, saying that he couldn't give up everything after such a long journey and everything he had to experience. Deus responded loudly by saying that all they needed to do was open a portal. One of the guy's legs stepped into the purple portal. He turned around and stopped, looking at Alex, who was just standing there. Deus asked why he wasn't coming. Alex replied that he needed to cover his tracks first, so Deus could go ahead, and he would catch up with him later. He approached the guy and began to push him into the portal. Deus turned around and asked how were his hands. The man, smiling broadly, replied that such minor injuries would be healed instantly as soon as he returned to the underworld, so Deus need not worry. Alex pushed him into the portal and the guy shouted at him not to linger. The man loudly wished him a safe journey. A couple of moments later, the portal closed and Alex was left alone with the unconscious Varias. Alex squatted down and bent over the guy's body, looking at him with his eyes burning with anger. He opened his mouth slightly, revealing sharp fangs, and stuck out his long tongue. He whispered in a hissing voice, asking how this little freak dares to defame him, one of the 7 dukes of the demon world, with this vile light. A long black spike began to emerge from his pupil towards the blonde. Alex hissed that he personally, with his own hands, in 20 years. He said that he would put an end to all his descendants and interrupt his line. Zeke snored loudly, wrapping his arms around his magical shield. A dark shadow hung over the sleeping guy. With his hands in his pockets, Deus looked at the fireflies flying around the snoring guy with a smile on his face. He noted, laughing, that the boy must have been very inferior since he slept like the dead. The horses tied to the cart peacefully browsed the grass under the night sky while a column of fire slowly rose in the distance in the mountains. Looking ahead, the guy smiled relaxed. He began to think out loud about what would happen in 20 years. He said that all these rules and the world order irritate him very much, so he will do everything to ensure that this day never comes. He shook his head and looked up thoughtfully. He asked what would happen to all these dragons. He asked if the dumb dragon knew what was happening to her children. Behind him, a female silhouette appeared in the sky. The girl said that she hoped that the dumb dragon he was talking about was not her. Deus turned his head and saw a girl in a golden robe fluttering in the sky. He turned around and cast his uncomplicated glance at her. He said that he was talking about her just now. Deus raised his head, looking at the girl. He asked if she had been watching him all this time. The golden dragon leaned back in the air as if there was a chair underneath her. She said she left a feather on Deus. The guy corrected her, saying that she most likely confused it with scales. Deus waved his hand towards where the massacre of the pureblood hero's family took place some time ago. He said that if the girl plans to file a formal complaint regarding this situation, then he is ready to be a witness. Looking down at him, the girl grinned, and Deus gave her a surprised look. She asked how he imagined it. She leaned forward a little and smiled playfully. She said that a witness in the form of a demon king sounded very funny. She changed the timbre of her voice, starting to parody the guy, saying that he was the demon king who stopped the hero who violated the peace treaty from hunting dragons. She added sarcastically that people would definitely believe it. Deus leaned his back on the cart and threw his leg over it. He said that it is a typical stereotype that all demons are bad. In response to this, the golden dragon asked if this fact applies to the situation when they rise to the surface every once in a while to relieve the chaos here. The guy looked away thoughtfully and rubbed his chin. He said he really doesn't understand why they keep doing all this. He asked why demons just couldn't live in the underworld. The golden dragon tensed and folded her arms across her chest. She loudly protested that this was a very stupid question from the demon king, which surprised Deus. The guy turned away and scratched his nose, looking at the girl with a dissatisfied look. He irritably told the lizard to keep quiet. He said that she herself generally stands aside and watches as her children die at the hands of people. Leaning back on the cart, he grinned. Deus said that these people even call her children a commodity and a thing. He added that he was sure this was not their first time hunting demons. Deus said that he was sure that they needed dragons to create weapons, since their bodies were a real treasure. Deus noted that they mercilessly kill children who try to save their mothers. A smile appeared on his face. He asked if this was not a blatant disregard for the treaty. Looking down at the guy, the golden dragon asked if, in this case, he could do this for her. Deus responded by asking what she meant. The girl replied that she wanted revenge. The golden dragon smiled wryly, and the veil on her face swayed quietly. He asked in a serious voice, can he take revenge on this dirty race that kills on children? Deus cast a thoughtful glance at her and hesitated for some time in answering. Looking at the girl, he asked why he would do this. He asked if she could figure it out herself. The dragon answered him with a short denial. Her gaze frowned and her eyes flashed with golden light. She strictly quoted that once a dragon leaves the dragonlands to enter the human world, blaming humans for the death of dragons is prohibited. She said that this is exactly the same as with the war between demons and humans, and there is no one to blame since this is the rule of life. Her eyebrows drooped and her face took on a sad look. She sadly said that therefore, as long as she was in the human world, it would not matter how many of her children died. She said she couldn't do anything about it. Deus turned away irritably. He asked if there were new rules again. He screamed loudly indignantly, asking who came up with them in the first place. The girl's eyes lit up brightly and she, as if falling into a trance, said in a loud, stern voice that these were all the rulers. At that moment, Deus felt something and his eyes widened. The ground shook under his feet and the guy fell, screaming loudly. The guy's shocked eyes brightened, and he touched his face and saw blood on his hand. He screamed loudly, asking if it was blood. The guy shouted loudly, asking what is happening now. He raised his eyes to her, the irises of which began to glow light yellow, and perked up when he heard the girl's words. The dragon said these are the rules. Floating in the air, the girl folded her hands on her knees, looking down at Deus, who was sitting on the damp ground. She said that these are the laws of the world to which they all belong. The guy stood up and firmly placed his foot on the stone. He muttered displeasedly that at first the golden Draco was talking about some rules and laws. He said that now she was talking about some rulers. The girl's eyes widened and she froze in surprise. Deus rose from the ground, clenched his hands into fists, and shouted loudly, pushing out the golden dragon's magic. He screamed, telling the girl to stop talking nonsense. He shouted that since they are all so omnipotent, they should rule this world themselves, and not throw out random rules and orders, thinking that everyone else will blindly obey them. Stretching her head, the girl leaned over and laughed with satisfaction. She noted that the fact that Deus was able to withstand this in a human body is truly impressive. He added that although the guy looks stupid, he will always be the Demon King. Deus gave her an irritated look and grinned. He told her to watch her tongue when talking to him. The golden dragon looked down at the guy who was leaning on the cart again. She asked what was the reason why he gave up the position of Demon King. Her eyes lit up with joy, and her lips stretched into a wide smile. She said loudly that she was very interested to know about it since he was the first. The girl enthusiastically said that he was the first to refuse this position in the last 666 centuries. The golden dragon noted that she thinks that the rulers are having a very hard time now because he is literally destroying the pattern. The delighted girl froze when Deus asked why she was so happy about this. The guy grinned and cast his contemptuous glance at her from under his brows. He asked if she herself wouldn't mind breaking the rules. The golden dragon pulled back, her veiled mouth opening wide in surprise. He indignantly replied that she was just curious, since this was the first time something like this had happened. The girl added that Deus still needs to be wary of the rulers, despite the fact that he may be safe now. The golden dragon said that in 20 years, when that very day comes, she is sure that the rulers will come up with something. Deus loudly replied that they could not even count on the fact that they would somehow be able to scare him with this. Deus perked up in surprise when the girl began to speak. She said that it doesn't matter now anyway. She looked down at the guy who walked away from the cart and straightened up. The golden dragon asked what the real reason was. She asked why the guy refused to be the Demon King. Her eyes lit up with joy again, and her lips stretched into a wide smile. She enthusiastically asked why he was breaking a system that had worked successfully for 665 centuries. Screaming loudly, she used Propolis to tell him what the point was. Deus replied that the reason was. He turned to the side, raising his detached gaze to the sky. He said there was nothing special about it. Deus sighed and opened his mouth slightly, saying that the reason he refused to be the Demon King. At that moment, Alex began to emerge from the portal behind them, attracting attention to himself. The man stopped in his tracks and looked at Deus. He said that he had dealt with everything, so now they can go calmly. Approaching the guy, he asked if he had been with the golden dragon all this time. The girl, dissatisfied with the interference in the conversation, loudly indignant that he could have found a better time to appear. Alex bowed to the girl and asked if everything was fine with the god of all dragons, and Deus rudely interrupted him, saying that all this was not necessary and he needed to open the portal as soon as possible since the guy wanted to go home. The golden dragon screamed indignantly. She leaned forward, casting her discouraged glance at Deus. He shouted loudly that he never gave her an answer to the question. She screamed, saying that she never knew the reason. Deus jumped into the cart and lay down next to Zeke. Yawning loudly, he began to wave away the golden dragon with his hand. The guy said that he didn't want to drag out this moment with meaningless conversations, so they would discuss this some other time. The girl perked up, indignantly saying that he was talking some kind of nonsense, to which Deus told her to hurry up and leave. He opened one eye slightly when he heard the girl call him again. The golden dragon straightened up, her gaze gaining confidence and her voice taking on a firm grip. She said that if the guy can't take revenge on them, then let him at least find out the identities of these scum. She added that she was interested in how many heroes were involved in this case. The girl flashed a stern look as she said, noting that many of her children died at their hands. He said that despite the fact that this is a human world, if they go too far, it will be a breach of contract, which could further lead to. She asked if the recent actions could have something to do with this. Deus extended his hand forward and stuck out 3 fingers, which surprised the girl. He briefly said that his offer was directly proportional to the number of fingers. He looked at the girl with peripheral vision, continuing to hold his hand up. He said in a calm voice that since things were getting more serious, he wanted her to triple the reward of their contract. The golden dragon, dissatisfied with this request, screamed loudly. Deus turned away from her again and closed his eyes. The girl said in an irritated voice that he was the devil's spawn. Deus indifferently replied that he seemed to be not an ordinary demon, and then added that in general, he believes that when children grow up, it is best to just let them go. He muttered that they needed to be released so that they would definitely be hunted. After these words, the girl jumped up in place and screamed loudly that she agreed to increase the reward. Deus thanked her for her understanding in a satisfied voice. The golden dragon extended her hand forward, sticking out her index finger, the tip of which glowed with a bright light. She said she was going to do something. Deus jumped up and sat down in the cart when the energy reached his body and began to look at himself in surprise. With his eyes wide open, he asked, "What is this?" Opening her mouth slightly, the girl replied that this was magic that would help hide his demonic aura, to which both ordinary and pureblood heroes usually react. She said that now this will not be a problem for him. When the carriage began to slowly drive into the opened portal, Deus said that everything was clear to him and the golden dragon could return back. The girl tensed up from such impudence and muttered that he was irritating her very much. A couple of moments later, the portal slammed shut and the girl was left floating in the air alone. She chuckled quietly. The golden dragon folded her palms on her knees. She asked herself if she was doing everything right. She asked to give her some sign. The three young men stood with their heads held high, and an enthusiastic smile spread across Zeke's face. There was a large coat of arms on the high stone gate. Three young people stood and looked at the huge light castle in front of them, to which an equally huge flying ship was moored. Deus asked irritably where did they get so much money. Alex replied that this is all because they belong to a family of heroes that is already about 60,000 years old. Hollis Duarsha family. Deus pointed his finger at Zeke and said that he is also a hero, but why is he like that? In response, Alex suggested discussing this issue later in private. Zeke, smiling nervously, looked away and apologized for being like that. Deus asked Alex why they should discuss this in private, to which he received the answer that Zeke might find it unpleasant. Deus asked again why he thought that. Alex smiled and stuck out his index finger. He said that as he said earlier, when the hero's family becomes famous, a huge number of nobles and castle lords try to sponsor them. He added that being a sponsor of a hero is tantamount to fighting for world peace, so Alex said that poaching dragons is also not the best source of money and, to be honest, absolutely everyone knows about hunting them, but they prefer to remain silent. Two fair-haired men, deep in conversation, stood and looked at each other. He added that silence even occurs among the dragons themselves, after which Deus asked why this was happening. Hearing their entire conversation, Zeke sank, muttering that this was like his life. Looking Deus in the eyes, Alex replied that people are at war with demons, and dragons have no choice but to help people. He added that if humans go extinct, dragons will be next. Deus rubbed his chin thoughtfully. He said that dragon parts are very popular in their world. Alex noted that they are even too popular. Looking at the gold-decorated facades of the palace, Deus asked that as long as this business is possible, people will take everything. Alex responded with a short agreement. Deus said that Hollis Duarsha and the rest of the people are hunting dragons. He looked at Zeke and asked if his family kills dragons. Smiling nervously, the boy scratched his head. He replied that this requires a minimum of G rank and only in order to get close to their nest. Yandex thoughtfully rubbed his chin and said that if Zeke could do this, then any yard cat would be capable of this. These words finally finished off the boy, and he fell to the ground, and Alex, seeing this, perked up and loudly shouted his name. The man sank down to him and raised his head from the floor in concern. Zeke quietly asked what are they doing here in this case. With a satisfied face, Deus folded his arms and said that they were here for business. His demonic eyes flashed, and the guy smiled slyly, sticking out his index finger. He said they were running an undercover operation. He happily added that this was a dragon hunting investigation operation. With a satisfied face, he took off and ran to the gate, saying that it was time for them to go. Alex, holding Zeke, who had not yet fully recovered, loudly asked the gentleman to wait. The man's face at that moment took on an excited look. Alex said that Zeke might be fine, but they can't go there like that, considering that after yesterday's incident their identities could have been revealed. He suggested that they try to disguise themselves somehow. Stopping, Deus turned around and gave the man a blank look. Alex and Deus, who had simply swapped clothes with each other, quickly walked forward, with Zeke laughing quietly behind them. Deus confidently said that now they can safely begin the mission. Alex, whose hair was tied in two ponytails, continued to walk with a detached expression. At this moment he was thinking that perhaps it was not too late if he decided to just leave. Deus walked happily, loudly saying that they need to hurry up. Zeke, who was walking behind him, extended his hand and called out to the guy in concern. Deus stopped and looked at the boy in surprise as he smiled guiltily and rubbed his hand on his neck. Zeke said that he felt that now is the time for everyone to play their part, and although Deus is fully worthy of the title of hero. Zeke began to clap his hands happily when the guy said that he was completely right and it would not be so difficult to do it. Deus stopped in front of the high gate and said that then. His demonic gaze frowned and he opened his mouth wide, revealing his fangs. The guy shouted that Zeke Panhalovich, the hero of all heroes and a candidate for the post of the last hero, who would soon become #1, had arrived to them. He angrily shouted for the door to be opened for them. Deus turned to his comrades and smiled a charming smile. He said in a sweet voice that he initially wanted to break it, but decided that it would be better to sort it out in words. Expensive paintings hung on the walls, the frames of which were decorated with gold, and above the table there was a large shield with the family coat of arms. Zeke was very surprised by the appearance of the room. He sat on the couch with Deus and looked around. He thought that the office looked very rich. Something caught his attention. He glanced at the hanging picture of the hero. He thought, is this man really published in all textbooks? On one side of the blonde man's face was a black mark in the shape of an inverted cross. Zeke thought that it was the last hero of the 52nd generation, who fought to the death for 13 days with the Demon King and one named Hassan Panhalovich VII. Looking at the picture, Zeke smiled and let out a nervous laugh. He thought that he could never compare with him. He thought that looking at him he was even ashamed to call himself a hero. Deus put his feet up on the coffee table, earning a surprised look from the boy. Deus told him not to worry too much. He leaned on the back of the sofa, threw his hands behind his head and looked at Zeke. He said that he had nothing to fear since all heroes are equal. Zeke smiled nervously and said that in reality this is only on paper. A stern voice came from behind them, saying that all heroes are actually equal. Alex and Zeke turned back in surprise and looked at the blonde man. An adult man wearing an expensive light robe and a cross-shaped black mesh on his forehead entered the office. He said that, however, not all heroes can fight on equal terms, since the holy blood of the firstborn flows only in the veins of those who can bear its weight. He added that only God knows who is destined to be a hero. The corners of his lips turned up slightly. The man said that he was glad to greet the hero Holovich and his companions. He said that his name is Solus Panholistuarsha, and at the moment he is the third-generation hero of this century, but now he is retired and looks after the house. Deus gave the man a surprised look. He thought that he had hoped that the blonde man would come out to them, but apparently his father came out. The last hero must be born into the 5th generation of the laws of the world, and he will be called Zero. He will be the son of a 4th-generation hero such as Zeke or Varias, only one of the holiest. As the man came closer, Zeke rose from the sofa and bowed to him. He said hello and said that his name was Zeke Panholovich and it was a great honor for him to meet him. He started waving his arms, pointing at Yandex and Alec. With a smile on his face, he introduced his companions. Solus calmly replied that he knew who they were. The eyes on Zeke's smiling face widened as Solus said he knew about their squad. The blonde man sat down on the sofa opposite them. He said that he was late because he went to the bureau as a hero. The man was surprised at how quickly Zeke was able to find companions, as he had previously been told that his family had already been excluded from the race. Zeke smiled nervously and scratched the back of his head. He said he wasn't surprised the man would think that. Laughing quietly, he added that he still tries not to give up. Solus's face frowned and he shifted his gaze to the side. He looked at Deus, who was lying imposingly on the sofa with an indifferent expression on his face. He thought that this was a rich merchant who had paid his way into becoming a partner, and for this he found the village an overdue hero. He thought irritably that this was a very ordinary story. Looking at the three young people, he asked why they came to the Holistarsha family. Looking at the man with a listless look, Deus said that they just heard one rumor and came to check it out. Zeke started and screamed, telling the guy to behave. At this moment, Solus's gaze frowned. He asked why he allows himself to talk to him like that. Deus raised his eyebrows and opened his mouth. He said he thought they would all have a friendly chat. He asked if a man should be addressed as a king just because he is a pensioner. Zeke smiled nervously, asking the guy to stop. Solus laughed loudly, surprising the others. At this moment, his face softened a little. He said that he was also so straightforward before and did not understand where his place was, so he behaved as he wanted, as if he could defeat the Demon King with one hand. He added that the guy must understand that there is still a whole sky above the ceiling. Worried, Zeke pulled a smile onto his face. He laughed and said that they understand what D-rank heroes are like. Clasping his hands, Solus asked his companion what rumors he had come with. Deus sighed and replied that he had already forgotten about it. Solus perked up when he heard the guy's question. Deus asked if they had any valuable goods. He added that they were looking for something specific. Solus grinned, surprising the guys. He said that he saw that they had money, but did not think that they would be able to afford it. He added that their family only works with premium materials of the highest quality. Solus straightened his back proudly. He said that he has the red obsidian salamander teeth and the black essence of the Lich King from the Hour in War. He added that he also, for example, has the platinum giant pepper from Mount Horga. Listening to his words, Deus thought that this was all nonsense. Solus was surprised when Deus said that he was looking for something cooler than this nonsense. Solus thought, how can he call this nonsense? Deus narrowed his eyes and smiled slyly. He said he heard his family had something cooler. Solus smiled a little nervously. He noted that only dragons are higher than giants. Deus threw a small bag onto the table. He said that since their hero is still a beginner, if strong armor is required. He unwrapped a bag containing bright red crystals. Deus said that they want to make dragon armor. Seeing the blood-colored lava stones, Solus wondered in surprise, where did the guy get such a rare element? Blood-colored lava can be found in the demonic netherworld near the volcanic mountains. Leica looked up at the man in surprise when he asked him a question. He asked if the guy didn't know. The man leaned forward and opened his mouth. He said that people now have a truce and trading dragon body parts is prohibited. He said that Holistarsha does not so to break laws. Solus added that he also has other rare materials, so they can try to assemble armor from them. Deus turned to Alex and said that it was time for them to leave here, which surprised Solus. He gave the man an irritated look. Deus asked who then put the dragon on the airship. He said that he saw the cross of the Halastuarsha family. Deus perked up in surprise when he saw the man's reaction. Soluz's face instantly frowned and a negative aura began to hover around him. In a stern voice, he asked if the guy wanted to say that he saw something. In response to this, Deus smiled sarcastically. He said they wanted to get into the race quickly. The guy added that they constantly come across some rumors while they are trying to catch up with the others. He said they end up stumbling upon something they weren't supposed to see. Soluz looked at him with a dissatisfied look, frowning his eyebrows. He replied that in this case his squad was very unlucky. He said they should be careful. Deus flashed his poisonous demonic eyes with a smile on his face. He noted that the tower takes a very long time to build, but it can be broken in an instant. He said that this is why they, beginners, barely understand how everything works and sometimes make mistakes. Smirking, he said that perhaps someday he would get up on his wrong foot and blab to someone that the families of the heroes were monopolizing expensive materials. He said that they should feed them so that they would keep their mouths shut. Deus and Soluz locked their confident gazes in a fierce battle. Looking at this, Zeke, smiling nervously, asked them to calm down. The young people froze in surprise when Soluz said that now he wanted to ask a question. Looking at the guy with evil eyes, he asked what he knows about the masked hero who fights dragons. Zeke at that moment trembled with fear, and Deus asked what was wrong with this hero. The corners of Soluz's lips turned up and he laughed. The man noticed the shield that was lying on the floor next to Zeke. He noted that it could be a coincidence, but their hero's Doomslagoon seemed to be made of blue and dark dragon stone, which was exactly the same as the masked heroes. Deus cast a displeased glance at the man. He asked how he knew about Doomslagoon. Soluz frowned and grinned a little, looking at the guy with a confident look. He replied that it was not surprising that he knew about all the highest rank artifacts, and this shine revealed the scales of blue dragons and dark stone dragons. He added that he had not seen anything like this for a long time, which means that the shield was forged in secret and quite recently. Alex and Deus looked at him with dissatisfied eyes. The guy thought the man was pretty good. He was surprised when Soluz called his name. The man said that he was addressing him personally because he was more like the head of a squad than a hero. The man's gaze again acquired aggressive notes, and he said in a low voice that he did not know what the guy had to do with the masked hero, but if he suddenly met him, then let him tell him his words. Soluz said that the hero destroys dragons, thereby depriving people of their main source of income. Deus gave the man an indifferent look and remained silent. Zeke trembled in fear when Soluz added that soon the highest heroes from the knowledgeable clans would go after the masked hero. He said they would also get rid of his squad. Zeke fearfully thought that they were all in trouble. The corners of Soluz's lips turned up. He said that a treasure like Doomslagoon should not remain in the hands of such a hillbilly. The man leaned on the back of the sofa and opened his arms with a smile on his face. He said that legendary artifacts require special handling, and the same goes for equipment and people. He added that rarity equates to value. The man stood up and 3 surprised glances followed him. Soluz added that there is something else. He stood in front of Deus and loomed over him. The man said in a calm voice that he did not know where such rumors were circulating. He added that prestigious families have nothing to do with criminal activities and they do not trade in dragons. A satisfied grin stretched across Soluz's face. He said that if they suddenly want to buy something from what was offered earlier, they can contact him at any time. He added that he was busy now, so he had to leave. The man walked past the sofas and with a dissatisfied face headed towards the exit, and 3 young men turned around and looked at him with displeasure. Deus's face did not express any emotions. Zeke's eyes opened wide in fear when they heard a loud, drawn-out scream. Is this what all heroes are like? Deus stands with his mouth open in surprise. I know it's a bit strange coming from me, but he's kind of a jerk, B asks Hero. The trio stands on a paved footpath. Yes, that's the answer. Deus looks thoughtfully into the distance. So, to sum things up, says he, the blood families are working together so that they can hunt dragons and monopolize its materials. Deus looks up at the countless spears with flags, and at the same time they destroy all the other material dealers. That's all true, Alex replies. The most important thing for a hero is his equipment. It looks like they're controlling the supply of materials so that they can control the heroes. That must be the reason why most families go through ups and downs while a few stay strong throughout the ages. It's possible that all of the famous families are part of this clan, says Deus. That's a fair assumption. Zeke is sad looks before by yourself. Sir Soluz, says he. I really thought that he'd be a righteous and fair person. It can't be that all the heroes I've looked up to are all like this, right? People are kind of rotten, yes, Deus asks, looking at the guy. It turns out that we are not the most evil and insidious here, right? Alex smiles quietly on the sidelines. No wonder they won 665 times, yes, Deus asks him. Tears roll down Alex's face. In any case, I congratulate you, says the hero, hugging the guy. You have become a target. Why is this? Smiling, asks Zeke. Didn't you hear what was said to you? The top of the clan is hunting for the masked hero. Zeke realizes the meaning of those words and is horrified. That's right, screams he. They'll all probably be from a D-rank family. What same to me now do, Sir Deus? Well, it's not like it'll matter if those little punks come at us in droves, replies Hero, but let's focus on our business since it'll get annoying if that happens. Our store is filled with weapons to sell. Zeke is listening, opening at mouth. Well, the masked hero will have to hide for a while, continues Deus, with his hands in the pockets of his cloak. Zeke asks again, not believing his ears. Let's do just one last thing, Deus declares, raising his index finger. Today, Zeke clarifies. The hero's eyes begin to glow with devilish fire. He bends 2 fingers on both hands. There's things we need to wrap up, declares he. That is to take out the renowned family of Halastuarsha and the dragon poaching cartel so that we can rip off Golden Law for 3 times the rate. The moon is shining in the night sky. Deus notices something and looks in surprise at what caught his attention. The Halastuarsha family even has a lake in their castle, says he is standing on high bridge above body of water. I'm jealous, to be honest. Zeke raises his hand and calls out to the demon. He turns his head in his direction. I would like to ask one small question, says the guy on whose head we again see the pin. So what we're doing right now is sneaking into the Halastuarsha family to find the dragon's corpse they have hidden somewhere in the castle to prove they are poaching dragons, right? He stands with his hand raised and looks carefully at the hero. It's like stealing, he says. That's right, Deus answers, pointing his finger at him. You are simply smart. Zeke raises his hand again. What is it this time? The hero asks him. Considering that we want to sneak into the castle, aren't we walking around its center too boldly? The guy asks. We see that this is exactly how it is. And literally the next moment someone appears next to them. Zeke crouches down in surprise. 2 well-armed guards approach the hero and his companion. Sir Deus, it must be patrol, trembling from fear, shouts Zeke. We need to hide quickly. No, I think we're already caught. The hero silently looks at the guards. They walk with stone faces and seem to not notice anyone. What should we do? The guy thinks to himself, his eyes widening with fear. The guard's foot stands in front of the hero. Both warriors simply pass by the demon and the guy hiding on his back with a saucepan on his head. Zeke doesn't understand what's happening. Finally, he realizes that Deus used invisibility magic and a happy smile appears on his face. He asks the hero if this is so, and he confirms by raising his index finger and thumb. The guy's eyes glow funny through the holes in the pin. Deus goes further, and Zeke follows him, asking him to wait for him. We see an intricate monogram on the pompous gate. Zeke shakes his head in amazement. What he sees shocks him with its splendor. There are monuments here, and benches with gold ornaments. Where they are going now, there is generally a lot of gold. Sir Deus, they really don't seem to have a dragon, says Zeke, walking next behind Hero. What do we do? Are you sure about this? Asks Deus. Where did Sir Alex go? By the way, the guy asks. I think I haven't seen him for a long time. He went a little earlier than us to start work, the hero answers, without taking his hands out of his pockets. I see, says Zeke. Failed product, calls him Deus. The guy listens to what will be said next. Has your family ever lived in such luxury? The hero asks, slowly walking forward. Zeke fun laughs. There's a story from the past that's almost like a legend, says he. As far as my grandfather can remember, we've always been poor. It must be that your family lacks that hard work, says Hero, no looking by his side. It could be, declares guy covering up eyes. Both my grandfather and father were low-ranked heroes. The demon and his charge walk, continuing their exciting dialogue. Rank. Do you guys take a test or something? There is a test, but you first have to graduate from the Hero University. Do you guys even have a university? Really? Yes, I'll be sure to send me younger siblings there. Wouldn't it be expensive? Yes, those at the Hero management are all shrewd businessmen. One that sells the future of people. We see leg hero on background Spears Castle, he calls out to the guy, and he answers, smiling. You understand, Deus says thoughtfully, standing by a luxurious city lamp, that we are going to do something not at all heroic. We will sneak into the possessions of the hero's family and steal something. The hero stands with his back to the guy. How do you, hero, feel about this? He asks. Zeke silently looks at the demon. We see how magnificent the castle they are inside is. I know it's a crime, the guy finally says. However, I realized something after meeting with Sir Solis earlier, continues Zeke. The hero turns to him. He is clearly waiting for an answer to his question. You, Sir Deus, is the real righteous one, sincerely speaks boy. While we might look like a pack of thieves right now, we're actually stopping those criminals trying to monopolize those materials, right? I was taken back by your actions before, but now I understand. You knew the truth about Sir Solus. The hero silently listens to the guy's words and seems to be touched by them. That's why you acted that way, to make him expose himself, right? Asks Zeke. I didn't plan this far, but you can think as you want, Deus answers, scratching his cheek. And one more thing, the guy says. The hero looks at him. Golden spears stretch upward behind the guy's back. Remember what you told me when we first met? Asks Zeke. What, this is yours chance. To be honest, although I couldn't say it, I pretty much gave up being a hero, says Zeke. Deus looks at him thoughtfully. The guy looks at his palm. I thought it was completely impossible for me, he says. His eyes glow from happiness. V holes pans, although it wasn't in the best situation. I even got to meet a D-rank hero, and getting to use an amazing shield is all due to you, Sir Deus. I know that. On earth lies rotten apple. I haven't done anything to deserve this, says Zeke. Still, he continues, looking at the hero standing on the bank of the canal. It doesn't matter as long as my younger siblings are able to live well. The saucepan on the guy's head is starting to look even elegant somewhere. I want to at least make sure these kids aren't called failures, says Zeke. I will make sure that I don't pass down this poverty to them. In eyes guy visible sincerity, I will be sure to raise them into amazing hero and saintess. Although they won't be at the front lines 20 years for the 666th war. Deus a little sadly listens. Guy, I'll make it so that they'll at least be able to participate in the rear, says that. So I can have a large portrait of my siblings fighting in the war like the one we saw at Sir Salu's place. I will be able to pass that down to the future generation of our family. The Hollowich family has participated in the 666th war against the Demon King. That's how the Hollowich family defeated the Demon King and lived happily ever after. Forever. Zeke is watching V Sky through holes his pans. What about you? Asks Deus Guy. You don't have part in this. He looks at the demon in surprise. Don't you have something you want to do or be? Speaks hero thoughtfully. Like, I want to live my life like this. You don't have anything like that. Sacrificing your entire life just for your family. Are you satisfied with just that? Zeke doesn't seem to know what to answer. He clenches his fist tightly. I only want this, he answers with conviction. You can see in his eyes that this is a sincere answer. I will lift my family out of poverty in this generation. The wind lifts the guy's burgundy raincoat high. If necessary, I will even make a deal with the devil, he firmly declares. Deus smiles. It seems that I chose the right one, he says, looking at the guy. All right, let's see this through to the end. To the depth of hell. Deus calls out to Alex, not noticing that his servant's foot is right above him. Yes, master, he responds from the luxurious lantern on which he sits. Zeke jumps in surprise. I found it, reports Alex. The guy still can't get over the shock. Let us head over, says Deus with a satisfied smile and an ominous glint in his eyes, to those bastards' secret room. That's how this video ends. If you have sat through to the end, please don't forget to press the subscribe button and leave feedback. See you in the next video.